Okay, we are live. I'm gonna just share this link really quick to watch the live. Okay, copy. So yeah, how are you? How are you drinking coffee this morning?
I'm always drinking coffee in the
Always drinking
morning,
coffee.
yes, and I'm doing amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you are currently living where the company is at that you get your coffee from that you normally have shipped to you?
No, no. I
Is
get my
that
coffee
backwards?
from the coffee is Cato Coffee, and they're out of
Okay.
I think Quebec, somewhere in Quebec. So I live
Mm-hmm.
in right now. I'm in Northern Ontario. Normally live
Gotcha.
in BC, but I get my coffee from Quebec because they're the best. Cato
Gotcha.
Coffee. Yeah.
Is it sold in stores like in Ontario and
No,
BC? Okay, it just has to be
sold
shipped.
nowhere. So
Sold
yeah,
nowhere. Just
found
once
it
you found it, you
randomly
can't go back.
through. I bought a really sweet sort of manual espresso maker called a Flare.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and so the site that I bought that from sold this coffee, and I asked them about it, and they were like, "Yeah, it's our favorite. Like, it's the only one we sell on our site because it's just the best." And I was like, "Well, okay, I got to give it a try, obviously," and I did. And honestly, for like drip, if you're doing just like drip coffee or something, I don't notice that much of a difference. But when I'm using it for espresso on the Flare, it's out of this world better. And I use an AeroPress for sort of my day-to-day coffee, which is like sort of like a French press, and it's quite good with that as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Cool.
Cato coffee. Yeah.
I forgot to ask you earlier about how much time are you good for today?
Oh, pretty flexible.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I imagine doing like an hour and 20 or something, but I
Sure.
just didn't want to keep you if you have a bunch of stuff going on. Okay, so let's hop right into it. So we're going to talk about the society project. Um, I'm not even going to give the rundown for anybody listening that doesn't know what it is. We'll just skip right into it. So, do you have the website up right now?
I do.
Okay, so I'm just going to the current laws to the top. One question I have for you: I couldn't think of a word to put for the things that aren't laws or anything else like legalized, something like age of adulthood. So I just wrote the word rules. Is there a better word I should have right there?
Oh gosh. Hmm. So it's like, so what else is going to go here?
I don't know. I might move some stuff around, like the percentage of votes to pass a law. I
Hmm.
might move to the section that says voting process, which also. So I don't know. So the
Yeah.
voting for citizens might move to that one too. So it's almost like there'd be a section that would only have things like
Hmm.
age of adulthood because that would
Yeah.
affect the laws, but it's not like legally you must be an adult or you
Right.
go to
Yeah.
jail, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's almost like
Um,
it's like underlying assumptions or something like that.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Don't have a word.
Okay. What are your thoughts about that it turned into 19, which is not different, much different from what we currently have?
I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, yeah, I think I voted 17 on age of
Okay.
adulthood,
Yeah,
but
tell me a little bit about that. What makes you think what do you see in a world where it's 18 that makes you want 1 year younger?
what do I see in a world where it's 18? Just sort of where I was at when I was 17. Like 17 is kind of the like between 17 and 18 is typically the age I think where people move out of their parents' home.
Mhm.
Um, and so it sort of makes sense that like at least in our society that adulthood sort of fairly closely correlates with that. It doesn't make sense like if everyone's going to college at 18. That's why I don't get if it's 19. It's like you're kind of a kid when you're living on your own, and most people are on their own by that age. That's why I don't like it.
Mm.
Why 17 as opposed to 18? I think still like a lot of people are moving out when they're 17, depending on when your birthday is. I think it's like in between the two ages.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just think back to like I think I was grade 12 was 17, and like I didn't really I felt like my brain was pretty much fully developed. I was obviously still very immature, but
Hmm.
I still kind of am. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I think I just went with like 18 because I'm cool with 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there.
yeah,
Um, I don't have exact reasons. I think it's such a complicated topic, but it has to be done. There has to be
yeah,
a number, and it has to be arbitrary. So yeah, I mean, in some sense, it must be connected to puberty,
hmm,
but it's not connected in the sense that it's the beginning of puberty. When we look at wild animals, like bears will have cubs, the mom will be with the cub until what I'm guessing must be puberty ish. Somewhere within the puberty range, the bear will start figuring out how to go off and be on its own and forget who its mom even is, and then go off and make babies of its own. And it's tough with humans because humans take so long to do anything. Like a horse is born and it's standing, but a human will take like a year to stand. And so the same thing with puberty. They hit puberty, and you'd think, oh, okay, they're going through puberty, so send them off on their own. Their body's already telling them to go make babies, but they take so long to do it that it makes it complicated. And then we have the capability of looking at brain development, like bears and wolves and stuff. They're not like, okay, let's check with the scientists and see when our cubs' brains are fully developed. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I definitely don't agree with the idea that 25 should even be thought of just because there's elements of the brain still changing. It really comes down to like at what point are you reasonably able to function on your own given the right upbringing? Because I don't think it's fair to say like, oh, okay, so a certain generation in a certain country is lazy because their parents do everything for them and they're watching screens all the time. So now, when they're 20 out in the world, they're going to act how people used to act when they were 14 out in the world. I don't think that's a reason to say, okay, let's adjust to what we've done to people. It would be like, okay, well, here's just a reason to do different upbringing styles.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And I think it's like, what are we trying to achieve by setting an age for adulthood? It just means like we're trying to say that some people we want to have freedoms for people in our society, but then there's some like safety concerns for people that are less developed that we want to override those freedoms, right? Like that's the whole point of having adulthood. It's like
mhm.
people can act on your behalf, and like there's things you're not allowed to do because for you don't know better for your own safety. So it's like we want to allow the maximum freedoms without crossing that sort of safety necessity threshold sort of thing. And
Mhm.
so I don't know, in my like we kind of want to push that as early as possible without causing
Mhm.
like a whole bunch of teenagers to just like get themselves in trouble. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, it might be something similar to how we create driving laws, where as soon as cell phones came out and everybody was texting, if nobody got in wrecks, I don't think we'd add a law saying you can't text and drive if somehow everybody was like a genius at it and could do it. It's once we see these wrecks, we go, okay, you can't do this legally. So maybe it's a thing where if we try to lower the age as much as possible within reason, and then we start seeing a bunch of 16 or 17-year-olds accidentally walking off cliffs for no reason, then then we can go, okay, let's adjust it because us making this adulthood age has led to these deaths. Um, yeah.
yeah. I think that's a good way to keep your laws in check for sure, or your underlying assumptions in check when you.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my camera back. I don't know what happened there. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have to like pick an age first, and then you can. But I think that's a good way to like just monitor it. It's like if we're getting way too many deaths from you know the fact that we have set the age at a certain age, it's like that's a good reason to just reevaluate it. But yeah,
Hmm. Okay, let's do a couple more things with age really quick. Are there a couple things that pop into your mind that there should be different ages for? And I think we'd have to keep in mind things that there should be different ages for without parents' involvement, and then things that there should be different ages for with parent involvement. For example, I know some people think that girls, when they hit puberty, should be able to go get birth control without parent permission. They just go in, the doctor will give them a shot or whatever without permission whatsoever. But then there's things where somebody might say a 16-year-old can get a tattoo, but only with parents' permission. People can start driving at 16, but a parent can say, no, not under my roof. I'm taking your keys away. What are a couple things that they should be able to do at different ages without consent from the parents?
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about some examples. So, are any of those particularly interesting to you that you want to talk about?
Sure. Let's go with the birth control.
Yeah. So I think the questions we would want to ask ourselves is there like a serious risk like involved with taking it that would be a severe temporary harm or permanent harm at all, or long-term harm? Is there? I don't know.
From my understanding, there is. I know there's a lot of people that are nervous about it, but I don't know. I never know which things fall into conspiracy theory land.
Yeah.
I've seen a handful of studies that will show different things. Like it'll show like a woman's preference in a partner as far as looks go, while on birth control, and then when you remove the birth control, it completely changes. They'll have them kind of describe what they like, and then when they describe it later, it's almost as if the hormones in their body it affected change some kind of outcome like that. I don't know. There's always possible issues when it comes to anything medical.
Yeah.
So
if there's permanent effects like that, I think that should be something where a parent is involved in that case.
Gotcha. Okay, and so it just comes down to what the general consensus of medical doctors would say. This is worth doing a trial.
A trial? What do you mean?
Well, like in the cases where we don't know what the outcomes will be, or if there's possible issues, or if they've done technical. Like, for example, in the 90s, we're the same age. In the 90s, I don't know if it was the same in Canada, but like every kid was medicated with like ADD and ADHD medication. It was like thrown out like candy. And my understanding is the general consensus now feels like that was overdone. And also the general consensus in most countries feels like America overdoes antibiotics. And it's like really bad for like your gut bacteria, but doctors just throw it out like candy. So I wasn't sure if what you meant was that something needs to be studied a certain way, and then if there are outcomes that we don't allow it, or I guess we're getting.
It basically, if there's known like permanent effects that are significant enough, like there'd be some threshold there where if there's like there are effects that are, let's just call them significant enough effects, and the significant could be like a great risk or a great temporary harm, or like even a minor permanent harm. But like if there's some permanent effects, I think that's the kind of thing that a parent should be involved in that decision.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas
Gotcha.
so a tattoo, like I guess there's a permanent effect, but it's very minor and there's like no huge risk or anything. So that would be like, it's a very, that one would be, I'd be closer to saying probably don't need the parents' consent for that.
Ooh. So, okay. So if you want adulthood at 17, you would say at 16, it's kind of this gray zone of almost near adult where they can get it without parent consent.
I don't see any issue with a 16-year-old getting a tattoo.
What if it's a face tattoo?
A face tattoo?
Like a Post Malone.
Yeah, I mean, so this is where like this significant enough thing sort of, there's a gray zone just in the word, because when you think of like most people, when you say get a tattoo, you're picturing just like something on your arm or your ankle or your calf or something. you're not picturing something on your face. So it would be much more significant if you get your whole face done in a tattoo, because it's a permanent thing that's going to like affect your life in the future. Whereas like the arm tattoo isn't really going to. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe there's like different types of tattoo that, yeah, I don't know how you like write laws around this.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, but that's sort of like the spirit of what I would want to do, by like accomplish, is give the maximum freedom without having that like safety threshold. The safety in this case being just like you're making a permanent change that's going to affect the rest of your life. You know, it's going to be harder to
Mm-hmm.
get jobs, probably, maybe. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so yeah, I mean, maybe there's a way to just like quantify that such that we can be, you know, if the tattoo's below the neck and, you know, a certain size or lower or something, it's like that falls into the not significant. And then if it is the face tattoo, it falls into significant, which would require parent consent as well as kid consent.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioning the size made me my mind started wondering, like, what if a 16-year-old wanted to get like a swastika tattoo?
Yeah,
Like,
same kind of thing with just like the significant. Like
okay.
that's basically the spirit of the word. So it's like we'd want, if we were trying to, like, the easy thing is just like make a call and say no tattoos, but it's like we want to
Mm-hmm.
give the maximum freedom. So it's like if we have the time to write these things and to think them through into laws, it's like better if we can allow for more, as long as that we're not allowing that significant thing to be crossed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe we can, like, if we just started with like, here's an approved list of tattoos that children can get. They're, you know, below 7, like between the ages of 15 and 16 or something, you can get without parent consent. And
Mm-hmm.
then just like built that up over time. I think that would be better than not having it at all. And so it's like, I don't know if it's easier to go from the ground up, where we start with the what is allowed and like build up,
Mm-hmm.
or if we just start with like, or if we try to like eliminate out what is not allowed. So it's like maybe there's certain designs that would cross the significant threshold. There's certain sizes or like places on the
Mm-hmm.
body or something. But yeah.
Well, maybe doing the parent consent is what kind of controls for that, because the parent could say, "Oh, I'm letting my kid get this tattoo on their arm or their back," but then if the kid's all like, "No, I want it on my face," the parent can say, "Nope, I won't. I won't sign my parental consent." And then if the kid's all like, "I want a swastika," the parent will be like,
Mhm.
"No," or the parent might go, "Yeah." But at least the parent consent might control for that in
It would control
a
for
high
it, but
percentage.
what it wouldn't do is allow the freedom to the kid who's in that, like, because we're sort of talking about like a gray zone age as you're approaching the age of adulthood, right? That's sort of what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah. So like whether that's 1 or 2 years or something, but that sort of range. So I think it's better to allow more freedoms for that gray zone range. So I think
Hmm.
it's better if like, you know, tattoo that's with, you know, an inch in diameter of any dinosaur. It's like should be fine for anyone to get. I don't know why this
Yeah.
keeps happening with my
Oh,
camera.
yeah.
That's
Might have a weird timer or something set to it. Okay, well let's go to a couple that are commonly talked about. Let's go to alcohol. Do you think there's a reason it should be 21 like it is now, or would you make it 17 if adulthood's 17?
mm, mm, don't have a super strong opinion on that. Like, I, I think I would not push it any higher.
Okay. Would you push it lower?
What's the argument for pushing it higher?
For pushing it high, oh, higher than adulthood or higher
Mm.
than 21?
Higher, well, if adult, yeah,
Oh, I see.
higher at all, higher than adult.
Okay. Because in Canada, is it 21 like it is here in the US?
No, it's 18.
Oh, what? Oh, crazy. Okay. Um, I mean, like me personally, I don't drink alcohol, and there's a crazy family history of it, so I view alcohol in such a poor way that I'm not a great person to judge alcohol. Um, but I mean, I guess just I don't know if there were like a lot of wrecks that like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids got in drunk and killed people, that like the numbers were so crazy. They're all like, okay, let's raise it. I think it's just like what it could lead to, but in my mind, I don't. I say whatever the adulthood age is.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think I would raise it. Like, in order for me to have my mind changed on that, there would have to be some like evidence, kind of like what you said. It's like, we know that we're setting the age of adulthood here, but the brain continues to develop. And during this phase of development, there's a big alcohol resistance development thing that happens where, you become exponentially more responsible with your decisions when you're drunk or something. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be many offsetting like positive outcomes in the world because of having this happen. Maybe we consider it then, like, but there need to be a lot of, I don't know, you need to be convinced that that is the case. And I don't think it is the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, I agree. I forget that Canada has different laws than here, so that affects that kind of thing. Well, okay. What about gun ownership?
and sorry, just first off, you said about reducing it. And I would sort of approach it the same way, like, probably in that gray zone, it would be like, maybe it's a with parental consent kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Like if you're at
So like
dinner with your
if you're,
family
yeah,
and
if you're
you're
with your parents or something, and they can
gotcha.
pour you a glass of wine if you're in that trend, like that 1 to 2 year pre-adult phase. But if you're below that, probably not, kind of thing.
Gotcha. Um, okay. And I had one more. Oh, going to like war. Do you think that's just same age as well?
Oh man. By going to where, you mean to volunteer?
Yeah, like if there's a draft, then would it be at adult age? If you want to, join the army as like a career, would it be adult age, or would you have to wait till like a higher age?
Hmm. I don't think I would put that anywhere different from adult.
Okay. And then, oh yeah, gun. Is gun about the same? Or can you think of anything that would be pushed
Yeah,
past adult age?
that would be pushed past adult age.
So, like in the U.S., you can't buy a handgun until you're 21, but you can get a rifle. And you can't buy alcohol till you're 21. And then the only other thing based on age that I can think of is there's some strange restrictions. Not, I sort of get them, but I don't agree with them on women that want to get like surgeries to make it so where they can't have babies, like
Hmm.
uterus ablations and stuff like that, and they or tubes tied. They'll say like, "Oh, what's your age or how many children have you had?" And if somebody says, "I never want to have children for the rest of my life," it's just when it comes to choices that are assisted by a doctor where it could lead to a permanent inability to have children. Like
Hmm.
they view that they're protecting that person's future thoughts. And I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, I think those are all like good, um, good topics to consider. It's like those are all like high risk things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're setting an age of adulthood that's somewhat arbitrary, it's like that we're trying to say brain development happens slightly differently from person to person, but on average, like we're picking this age because most people are past our threshold of, sufficient brain development to be able to make rational decisions. But like, sort of by definition, there's going to be some part of the bell curve of people who are now adults who can't make rational and sufficiently rational decisions. So maybe there's like high risk things that we want to be a little more cautious about, like ownership of certain guns, or use of, like, or opting into some type of medical procedures or cosmetic procedures or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a list of what those are, but like I think those are all worth discussing. I think there's like, yeah, I think it's worth getting a list of what those high risk things are and like putting it up
Mm-hmm.
for for a vote kind of thing.
Okay. I don't know if guns at all or like one's protection is a high topic in Canada, but do you? The opinion I basically hold is if a gun is legal, then you should be able to get it at adulthood. If that's the age you can own a house, because if you buy a house, you should be able to protect yourself. Do you have any disagreements with that statement?
Oh man.
Like we might
uh,
want to outlaw certain guns or certain types of clips or whatever. But I feel like if some people think you should be 21 to own a gun, but if you're 18 and you get married and you have a kid and you're living out in the country, you're far away from police stations. Somebody breaks into your house and it's like, oh dang it, I'm 3 years away from being able to own a gun to protect myself.
yeah, I am like, I'm not even 100% on like pro guns, to be honest with you. Like I'm
Oh,
sort of
okay.
I'm undecided on that one. I don't know enough. It's like I don't personally see the value in, well, I see the reasons for allowing gun ownership. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I also see good reasons against, and I haven't like gone into it enough to be sure of my opinion one way or the other there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I want to comment on like gun ownership at certain age or something. You know what I mean? Without having decided on where I sit on the gun ownership in general.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll hold off on that one. Let's hop to the next one. Okay. So I'm gonna skip past the voting age of. Well, do you have any thoughts on the voting age being different from adult age?
No, it should be adult age.
Okay, I agree. Um, let's see. Okay, so percentage of votes to pass laws. I think initially you said you wanted majority, but it might have just been for the sake of a hypothetical project and not the real world. But then, as far as the real world ideas, I think the other day I saw a comment that you said you might have agreed with something I was saying. Um, had you just thought about it further, or did you change your mind or not change your mind?
You're talking about having something like a supermajority to make
Hmm.
law changes.
Yeah.
I don't think I was ever just majority. Like
Oh, okay.
maybe I was between. I thought it should be lower than the 2/3 majority, but higher than 50. It's like, yeah, my original position on that was just it seems. I like the fact that we can change, like the agility of having 51% majority to be able to like change laws that we change our mind on or receive new information or something. But
Hmm.
like, I don't like the idea of having just like, if we're kind of split on a controversial issue, just like having one person could just flip flop and we have to like constantly change the legislation because of one person like wakes up on a Tuesday and they feel one way, wakes up the next day and they, because maybe they're like 50-50 and changing the, like, it seems weird to
Hmm.
just like constantly have to revote and have like change our legislation. And now the people living in the society have uncertainty and instability with what the laws are, and they have to always go and check, well,
Hmm.
what's the law today, you know, can I
Yeah,
do it?
yeah.
And I'm
Well,
going to
and it's like
now
the
for
the
this.
49% have to, like, imagining it was a complete democracy and there was 100 million people living in an area and all of them could vote. The
Right.
49% of people would have to like give in to whatever the 51 say. And I feel like the higher you can get the number, the better, while being able to achieve um, creating laws. Like what minimum percentage is reasonable to call crazy people? you know, like um, there's going to be outrageous things that if you had to get like 90% of the vote, there'll be 10% of people that will say some of the craziest shit you've ever heard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then like leaving it to the 51, I just see like a wide range of bigotry if you leave it to the 51. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's yeah, I just think it's tricky. I think I would I'm much more in favor of something just like being bad that can happen that hasn't become illegal yet, than I am to make a wild amount of things illegal. Like right now, I wish somebody would make circumcision illegal in the real world. Um, but if the only way I could get that is by making it where it's a 51% majority, and therefore we're going to see crazy laws happen based on whims throughout my life,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm up for that. So,
Yeah. No,
but yeah.
I kind of agree. Like, yeah. So like to fully explain my position, that the instability of like a 51-49 based society is one of the reasons not to, and the other one is sort of what you said, is like the higher or the increased probability of like a bad law being made, because just happens that like 51% of people agreed. It's harder to get to like 60% of people to agree, or 70. But I think that argument is less strong, because um like, do you not think it's more likely that the 51% is right about something than the 49%?
I think that it is likely the 51 is more right than the 49, but I would think that the higher percentage that agree, the more likely it is. So anything that 100% of people agree on is probably awesome. Like if 100% of people say, no, let's not murder people, then that's awesome. But if only 51% say, oh, our Bible says gay people are bad, so let's stone them. And then 49% of people in that time and place
Well,
in the world are the ones getting more progressive out of maybe religious ideas. Then it's like, well, only 51 believe this thing. I want more people to believe it, to go like, okay, this must, at least for our group, it must be good for the majority and not a small majority. If yeah.
yeah, but that sort of doesn't that almost assume that you sort of come to the right answer by default, whereas like we're trying to find what the right answer is all the time in real time about every issue. It's like there is no, like, we already don't stone people and now we're going to start stoning people. It's just we have a position, like, might be right, might be wrong, we're not sure, and we're talking about whether that position or that like law might change for when we're not sure if it's for the better or for the worse. So it's like, how do we want to set up a system that like considers changing that law? It's like, if, because
Mm.
you know what I mean, like we could be, the stoning could be legal and we're deciding whether to make it illegal.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess here's another way I like to look at it. So if I was just out in nature and there was a small group that wanted to start a society, let's say it was 100 people, and we were trying to figure out like what would be the benefit of creating laws, and then it would be like, okay, the benefit would be that it would help us. We want to be helped. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we figure out what we want and what helps us? And if we're deciding, okay, you can't kill, you can't punch in the face, you can't enslave somebody, we'll be like, you know what? It was nice to make that person do all your work for you. It feels good having your work done for you. But like 100% of us are saying, let's not enslave or whatever. Um, to get these 100 people that have all the freedom in the world to feel good about being in a certain area, if 51% or if 51 of the 100 people said to the 49, yeah, we want to decide you can't do this thing, then that's almost half the group going, I don't know if I want in here. I don't know if this group is worth it for me, because there's so many of us that want to be able to do this thing and it's being outlawed. I think there's a difference between going from this natural idea of nature doesn't care about you, there are no rules, trying to create rules. You have to have like in my mind, a bigger majority saying like this is what we want. So if you're 1/3 of this group that wants to do a thing that 2/3 says you can't do this thing, then it's like, oh man, like this sucks. I hope I can convince them someday to change their morals. But it's only 1/3 of us. So we can either hit the road and get out of these borders, or we can realize we like these other laws, so we'll sacrifice this one.
So you're talking about like when you're making a law to remove a freedom specifically?
I think that's what every law is. So if you make a law that you can't
Not
murder
well,
people,
every law, but not everything we vote on, because like age of
oh, true.
adulthood, for example, isn't a law, but it's something we vote on. So like
Mm.
if we wanted to create an age or to change an age or something of adulthood, do you think that should be the same?
I think for that's a fair point. So something has so in a society, you almost one of the first things you must have is an age of adulthood, um, and therefore it's not as simple as it's illegal or not illegal because it's just a number on a spectrum. So yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I think that would have to come down to majority. Um, if you couldn't create a 60% or a 2/3 majority vote on a number, but I guess I'd want it if it were to be changed, it would be a 2/3. So right now it's 19 in ours. If people wanted it to be 20 or 18, I would still go back to the 60% or 2/3.
Yeah, this is sort of what I liked about what I thought Phil was saying the other day when you were
Mm-hmm.
having this discussion in the panel is like the the 50% majority or the 51% is fine when you need to get yourself out of like that stasis. If you don't want to be stuck on an like,
Yeah.
well, we can't get 2/3 in either direction, so we can't make a decision. It's like if we need to make a decision about something that like there needs to be a decision. There is no stasis. Like we need to decide on an age or like
Mm-hmm.
which individuals are included in society. Like should animals, for example, be included in the set of having rights or whatever? Um,
Mm-hmm.
like we need to make a decision on these things. And so you kind of need to have 51% for certain things, but then to change a law that already exists, it's and this is where I think he was saying something different from what I think, but I think we need some sort of like I just don't like I like the fact that we can adjust our values over time and like be agile to change
Mm-hmm.
laws when the majority changes their mind, but I don't like the like if we end up in a place where we have a controversial issue that is sort
Mm-hmm.
of stable around the 50% for 50% against, like
Mm.
it's I don't know, like I don't want it to just be flippy floppy every day. I want there to be like in order to change it there needs to have, slightly more than 50. It's like 55, 60, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and so I like what Phil was saying, but it's kind of complicated because what he was saying was if you got to see what percentage made the law in the first place,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
part where it was a little too complicated, I think.
okay.
Yeah.
So in your mind, to create something initially 51 is good, but to
Yeah.
change it at all, you would need at least 60 or 2/3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So the reason I think that's I aside from something like adulthood age, anything that you're changing the legality, there already is a thing and then you're trying to change it. So in nature, you can legally do anything. There might be repercussions, but you can do anything. So like circumcision, somebody out in nature can circumcise their baby even without a doctor or whatever. And so it already is legal in a sense if you don't have laws, and then having the 60% to make it illegal is kind of like you're only in limbo for something where like the age thing where the not voting isn't an answer itself. So if you have 49% of people wanting a thing and they're told by 51% that you don't get that thing, yeah. But I mean I get it. I mean it's not like I think I'm right, but I'm not clearly right. It's not that cuz I mean yeah, if I'm on an island with five people and three of us want to do something and two don't, um, it might be best to do that thing, even though it's just a simple majority. Um, I just don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so what are you leaning towards now? Are you leaning when it comes to things that aren't like the age thing? When it comes to just yes or no's, do you lean towards you want it to be 51 to put something into effect, but then to remove that, it's 60? Or is it
Well,
just
I
60 to
think
put it
50.
in?
So I think we're in a unique position where we're sort of deciding all our, like, this society's position on all these issues. I think that 51% is fine in that case.
Okay.
So I would vote for a 51% during the initial period of like law creation, and then shifting to a more stable like 55 or 60% following that is, I think, where I
Okay.
sit.
Okay. That's what you initially voted. And while we were talking, I changed it on the website. And I'm changing it back real quick.
What did
Just
I
hold
vote? Sorry.
on. Well, you initially voted that you wanted it to be 51% for the initial creating of laws.
Yeah.
But then,
Okay.
but then you just told me a second ago that you wanted it to be the 60%. So then I changed your vote on the website. And
No, I
I
said,
thought you did. Yeah.
oh, I see. Sorry. Yes.
I
So,
thought you were agreeing with me that to create a law whatsoever, to make something illegal, like pot's illegal. I
right.
thought you were saying that yes, it has to be 60%, but you're just saying to overturn is 60% or
Right.
something like it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Basically, like, once we're out of this initial creation thing, it's like, if we set it, we got to, like, let's vote on a bunch of laws. Where do we start our society at? 51%.
Mm.
And then once after that point into infinity, 60% or something,
Okay. Gotcha. No, that makes sense.
including new issues. So, like, a new substance is created, or something, like a new technology is created.
Okay.
It's like, oh man, like, people are getting addicted to this technology. Should we limit use of it or something? It's like, we're not back to 51. We're past our unique society creation point.
Mhm.
We're going 60% on.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
and that might be how it had been done in the past too. Like so with the U.S., like the separation from England was 1776 ish, and then the Constitution was like 1780, 89, 90, and so there's probably like 15 years of there are plenty of laws everywhere, but the Constitution itself declare the 2/3 majority, at least for changing the Constitution. I don't know if it's about creating individual laws, but
Mm,
do you know? So in Canada, do you know like are each of the is a province? Is that what you call your states?
it is.
Okay. Do you know if each of the provinces are kind of like states to the level where there are certain things they have control over?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Are
Including like
you
the age of drinking, for example.
Okay. Are you in favor of there being more province or state control by their own government? Or are you more in favor of federal law taking care of most things?
Uh, I don't know. Probably depends on the place. Um, Probably mostly federal. Like, it's kind of weird to just be driving around in your own, in a, like, countries are separated by borders and you need, like, to do things to go from one to the other. But like provinces or whatever, it's like you can just go from one to the other. You could live in a city that's like 10 minutes away from a border and cross over, and it's like, oh, I can go here and, drink, but I can't go back and drink and have a drink, and now I go to
Mm,
jail if I finish my drink on the other side of the border. So it's like, it's kind of
that's a
weird,
fair
I guess.
point.
But there might be exceptions to that, like
Mhm.
if there's like a limited resource or something that in one province that doesn't exist in the other province, where there's, you know what I mean? Like,
Like
there might,
watering your lawn if there's a drought
yeah,
or something.
that's a great
Yeah.
example. Great
Yeah.
example. Like, there might be reasons
Okay.
to do it, but I think on the most part, I would want most of that control at the country level. What do you think?
Okay. The way I explained it to somebody the other day is I think things that basically things that are physical harms, I think should be federal. So I think federally it can be told in the entire country there's no slavery, there's no killing for fun, there's no just like there's no rape, there's no the punching people or whatever. And then anything that is just moral opinions outside of that, if an area that's considered its own state or province, the majority, hopefully a supermajority, want a certain thing because of just the morals of that kind of culture of that area, then I don't really care. Like I'm pro gay marriage. I think it's a silly idea for somebody's religion to say these people can't do this thing they want to do. But that type of thing, something that's like a religious based or a moral based, or like me, I think lying is wrong. Not because of religion. I'm anti-religion, but I'm a huge fan of Sam Harris's book Lying, and I think everybody should listen to or read or listen to it and see the benefits of not lying. But I don't think it should be illegal to lie. So when people have these different stances on morals that aren't physical harms, I think it's probably best to leave it up to individual states, especially
What
because you
about
can.
risks? Things that could be a
Ooh.
physical risk,
Well,
like a
another thing
speed
I was going
limit.
to say would be like drugs. I think drugs is a perfect example. If one state or province wanted to legalize cocaine, not only would it be a good trial we can all watch and go like, what happened? Did all the kids in that area start doing drugs? Um, and so I think that kind of thing, so a drug thing would be a thing. But yeah, a risk, you could be told that if you just randomly shoot a gun out in the forest, it's illegal because there might be somebody else in the forest that's going to get hit. To me, it's a middle ground area that I think I lean towards that being a state thing. Um, but I don't know. It's kind of irritating because the younger me would have said anything I think is right should just be federal. So I would just we need to legalize gay marriage. We need to legalize all the drugs. We need all these different things. But I have to accept that if something isn't a direct like rights violation, like at least a physical rights violation, that there are different people that just have different opinions, and I don't know how harsh I should judge something that they got to that opinion based on their religion, where I got to my moral opinion based on something else. But yeah, do you have an example of risk besides the gun thing I said?
Speed limit is what came to my mind.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, like speed limit. I feel like that makes sense to have that be a state to state thing because like in a sense you're obligated to drive because just how the world's set up. But like you're not forced to. You can take that risk if you want. You can drive less if you're worried about getting in a wreck because driving you accept this risk anyways. And so
Mhm.
in your society if you see like I'm a cautious driver. I was in this wonky wreck once that freaked me out, and so now I'm just super cautious. If the speed limits went up and I had to match those speed limits, I might drive a lot less, and that's a bummer for me. And I'd feel like I wish they were lower, but I don't think individuals should have any effect on that. And if you ever visit California, in LA, their driving is insane. And it's really hard to keep up with that. But they like it. They have their speed limits at like 70 instead of like where I'm at. In Oregon, there is no 70. 70 doesn't exist on any road. Um, and yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're saying, so like, what's true of making a law in a state that is, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like more agile or something, or it's like you have this mini community, and so you want more flexibility to like adjust to a smaller sample size of like-minded people. That's the idea.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is kind of the thing we're talking about with the percentages. Like, I feel like if 2/3 of either the politicians or the adults in an area that's considering themselves an area want a certain thing, I feel like okay, yeah. I mean, that should probably happen if it's 2/3 or if it's 3/4 or something like that. And so if you have a huge country like the U.S., the 332 million, I believe, if you have a chunk of land that like right now we can picture it being California or Texas or something. But if we didn't have those separate states, if it was just a chunk of land where there were millions of people that completely like disagreed with other people like on a topic, like just some kind of a moral topic, or like let's say
Like gay
schooling or something.
marriage.
Yeah, sure. Let's say gay marriage. So if they just didn't want, it's such a tough topic because the government should probably get completely out of marriage. Um, but yeah, let's say drugs. Let's say pot. Let's say they just didn't want it to be legally sold in stores. If you have this big group of people that want it, then saying no, even though 90% of your group want this, 60% of the whole country wants you to not have it.
Yeah.
At some point, numbers get so high that I feel like I'm starting to sound like an anarchist now, but I'm far from it. Um, but that I don't know that different groups should have their thing.
But
Maybe I
that
should
can't,
come up
like,
with an example that
can't that go
I.
yeah, can't that go the other way too though? Like you'd have all these like super, you know, like religious communities or whatever that outlaw gay marriage. So it's
Mhm.
like all gay people that live in Florida just don't have the ability, for example, to get married.
Yeah. Well, so I want gay marriage to be legal, and I want pot to be legal. But like, so right now, it hasn't been federally legalized, but it's legal in my state. You wouldn't believe every other store is a pot store in Oregon, and it's great. It probably brings in good revenue, and people are having fun, so it's good. I'm not a fan of smoke being in the lungs, but make some brownies or something. Um, but if it had to be a federal thing, then that would mean I have to say Oregon, no pot until it's federally done. But
Hmm.
if you leave it up to the states, then like Oregon can say, yes, we want it. And I don't know, Alabama can say, no, we don't want it.
Hmm.
Uh, Alabama gets a lot of shit here, but probably for good reason.
But like, so then that's something like the death penalty, for example. It's like I feel like I don't know what are country laws and state or whatever, but like I imagine that most people in the U.S. would probably vote against it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say they do, but now you still have all these pockets that do allow it, and so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Now,
sort of like the opposite.
yeah, so I would put that in the category of what I think should be federally done because it's a physical thing. I think that any good government should just be not allowed
Okay,
to
well
take a life.
let's go back to gay marriage then.
Okay.
So once the threshold is crossed and whatever percent of all people in the US agree with gay marriage,
Mm,
there's still going to be all these pockets where it's still allowed that it's banned for a long time.
okay. So, would you think that maybe the state should be allowed to do it while there's not 2/3 of the country in favor of it, but then once the 2/3, then that makes the states not allowed to? Like,
Uh,
say half the states in the U.S. say no gay marriage, and the other half say yes gay marriage. And overall, for the whole country, it's a little less than 2/3. Would you say that each of those states get to do what they want to do until 2/3 of the Senate or whatever say no, this needs to be law for the whole country?
so just so I understand, you're saying there's sort of this like buffer zone where it's between, I guess it would be between 1/3 and 2/3 majority, right? If it was
Mm-hmm.
2/3 the other way, it would go the other way and nobody's allowed. And if it was 2/3 the other way, everyone's allowed.
Yeah.
But if it's in between,
I think you would have to bite that bullet if you want it to be federal. You'd have to accept that federal can go the other way, right?
I like on the without thinking that through, that seems really reasonable. Like
Yeah. It's
then
hard to
it sort of
separate
it
yourself
gets
from
rid.
your own stance.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't think it's hard to do that. It's just hard to think through like what the implications are.
I
And if
didn't mean you, but I think it just is hard for people to go, how can I get in a mindset where I can find it reasonable to pass a law to make it so gay people can't get married? It's hard to it probably is for most people, I guess.
yeah.
Um
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I like everything that does. I like that it's like it gives you the ability to get rid of these like bad pockets or whatever, these like pockets that really are against our progressive societal values.
mhm.
but it also allows like emerging pockets to, like, when values are starting to progress for the better, it's, you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like it cuts off the laggards at a certain point, after a certain point, and
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, as values develop, it at least lets there be some leading areas that are like putting laws in place ahead of like needing that 2/3 majority. So
Mm-hmm. Well,
I kind
like,
of like everything that does.
yeah, no, me too. Kind of imagine it with something that's outside of a country that could be part of it. Like we could demand that Germany is part of the U.S. and then somehow that goes through and it is. But as of now, it's its own place. Now, the U.S. can look at Germany and go like, oh, okay, you guys are making gay marriage illegal. We don't like that, but we're not going to go in and force you to change it. But as soon as they start killing 6 million Jews, not that the U.S. is the best example because we kind of arrived a little late, but let's imagine we didn't. We'll be like, okay, you can create your own laws here. You can decide if you want pot legal and gay marriage legal. But once you start killing all your Jews, we're gonna go in and we're gonna tell you no, like you can't. So I guess we have to view it something like that because even though right now Canada and the U.S. are separate, if they become one country and then we have all the 50 states here, and then you got your Ontario and your British Columbia and all these things. Um, Once you start looking at it as one country starting to have say over another country or another province or anything like that, you got to start thinking about what's reasonable. What can the U.S. tell Canada, and what can they not? Supposedly, none of you guys lock your doors in Canada, so we can't tell you to lock your doors. But if you start killing all your Jews, I don't know how many Jews you guys got, but if you start killing all your Jews, we're gonna come and we're gonna stop that. And so I think it's kind of the same way where like Alabama can start saying, "Oh, we're gonna start sacrificing 5-year-olds to the sun gods," and the U.S. as a U.S. will be like, "No, you can't do that."
Right.
Um, so yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that cutoff is, or like at some point, should we turn California into 2 states because it's so big? Should it be based on population? I don't even know how people
But
begin to decide these
the
things.
whole like cross country law thing, you're just saying, so we were sort of talking about the difference between like what states or provinces should be able to control versus the country, and now you're saying like, are there certain things even beyond that that are so extreme that one country should be able to enforce over another? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just pointing out that if one is having a hard time looking at the difference between a federal law and a state law,
Ah,
that it might be worth looking at what a country would think of another country.
gotcha.
I
Yeah.
don't think they should have as much control. I think the federal law of the U.S. should have more control over California or Oregon than it would over Ontario, obviously, because it's not
The
connected to it.
difference, though, I think, is that there's no shared set of law. Like, I think that one country invading another to stop a rights violation or something is more akin to like, uh, I don't know, breaking a law, like breaking a bad law. It's like,
Yeah, like instead of picking what should be law, it's
there's no like
well,
shared agreed upon law. Like Alabama is in the U.S. and so they're governed by the U.S. laws, but there's no like Canada didn't agree to be part of U.S.'s laws or whatever. So it's like
yeah.
there's no, yeah, it's not like it's, you know what I mean? Like you're just saying, hey, quit. I disagree
Quit that.
so vehemently with what you're doing that I'm gonna, regardless of your laws, I'm gonna go and stop you from doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think it's a good way to think of like it's kind of what I think. I didn't realize this till now. This is how I view state laws. If you disagree to the level where like you would go into Germany and stop them from doing what they're
Right.
doing, or let's say the Aztecs were still around. Aztecs sacrificed about 20,000 humans a year to their gods and whatnot. If the Aztecs were still around, we'd probably go put a stop to that. And so anything that we would think of that is reasonable to put a stop to elsewhere, then that should be federal law. Anything where we'd think if we go to start a war over something, it's not worth it, like Germany outlawed gay marriage, let's go fight them to the death to get gay marriage. In my mind, as of right now, I lean towards that should be state law. But some people would think that like abortion would fall under that category. But I feel like aborting a fetus a day before birth is federal law. You just stop that completely. And so I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd necessarily say I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
The abortion part or
No,
the other
no.
part?
Just everything that's a federal law should be like invasion worthy. I don't.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I don't- like. I just don't know. Like, there's
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
lot of laws that I might want to consider some of them to be federal, but like I might want to set the speed limit federally, but not be beholden to invading a country if they set a lower speed limit or something. Like,
Fair
I don't
enough.
know.
Yeah, it kind of feels wonky, but part of why I like it is the trial and error. If one state is like, no, we're gonna bump our speed limits up, and then we see all these deaths, we're like, all right, I'm glad you guys were the guinea pig. Same thing with if one state legalizes meth and heroin and all these things, we can look at the numbers. We can see, oh, okay, all the drug dealing crime went down here, but all the 12-year-olds doing meth went up, and we can just weigh it out and go, okay, now the rest of us states know what we want to do. I don't know if that's a fair reason to like states, but I prefer trial and error in small doses. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hop to another one. I think
Sure.
we got about another half. You got
I just,
another like half
yeah,
hour.
yeah, I'm good. I just want to read it. One of these
Yeah.
contrarian 420 is calling me out. I just want to see what it is. Canadian wants to enforce personal progressive values and philosophies on the entire country by force. That's just saying it's ironic that I'm Canadian and that I want to create laws around values.
So first of all, I will point out that I think Contrarian 420 is pretty awesome for what little bit I know this person. But I think there's this thing that happens on the internet, and I think it's happening right now, where people might hear one slight thing and think, oh, that's one of these people. So you must have said something that made him think that you are a leftist, which seems like what he's progressive, whatever.
Yeah, saying my values are subjective.
Yeah.
So yeah, my values are subjective, and I'm trying to force them on the country. Yeah, that's kind of what a law, any law is, right?
So I think the only thing that might have triggered him right here would be the idea that I'm guessing maybe, I don't know if he's against. Hey, contrarian, you should let us know if you're against gay marriage. I won't feel any negativity towards you, whatever you say, but just share it. But my thought would be that he must strongly feel that states should control the majority of things, and therefore, if you're saying they shouldn't, then you're trying to put.
Yeah, but hold on though, because the whole point of saying that I'm trying to force something by put something by force, for allowing a freedom, that's not doing anything by force, right? Like the saying no gay marriage is that's force.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I don't fully follow an idea of why somebody would want gay marriage illegal, but forcing people of a state that don't want the gay marriage to happen to let it happen, I guess there's some kind of force. Or maybe the better example is if somebody's profession was to officiate weddings, would you want to force them to officiate a gay wedding if they were against it? And maybe that's the type of thing they're thinking of.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and he answered your concern.
You said your centralized government would fix pockets of areas with differing values to you. Yeah, not really to me, but to right? Because it's not my values that are dictating what this centralized government does. It's the
supermajority of
position or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
contrarian to counter what you're saying, to make you basically probably are like Michael in a lot of ways, where if it was legal to murder children for fun in all of the states, and then the government, or let's say some of the states, and then the government was trying to say, nope, federal law, you can't murder 5-year-olds. That in your mind, in that case, it would fix the pockets, where you might disagree with what Michael is referring to as pockets. But either way, we would each have our thoughts on, at some point for some topic, the federal government should step in, and maybe even federal governments of a country should step into other countries. If we have a way to stop like child trafficking or something, we should step in no matter what the values and morals are of that
Yeah.
culture
And
that likes
you
the
can just keep
trafficking.
extrapolating this like down the line. So it's like, if you're upset that a country is doing that to a state, like the state is doing that to a municipality, and the municipality is doing that to a community, and the community is doing it to an individual. So it's like at some point somebody's holding a gun to somebody's head, and somebody's saying, hey, stop holding that gun to their head. It's like, is the you know what I mean? Like you're employing force. I got a plane coming by. Employing force to the gun holder, in a sense. Like, is that's right? Like that's sort of what a law does. Is it saying, hey, you can't do this bad thing to somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Well, and he says that you granted it was your subjective values. He was saying that that he, as a voter, would vote in that way, but that it would not be up to him as an individual to control the whole country. It would be whatever you have as government. If you have like a 2/3 majority of 100-person Senate, then it would be that. There's a level of
Yeah, I
okay.
agree with Carson. There's a level of basic laws like murder, rape. Don't agree if federal government should enforce values which are not as objective. I don't know how, like, why you think murder and rape are objective. I don't know why you would think that anymore. Like, maybe it's obvious to you, but it's certainly not objective. So I don't know. I think it's just we need to come. Like, I don't even know what we're arguing about, to be honest. Like, societies, we come up with things that we don't like, things that we like. I'm saying we do that in the creation as a 51% majority, and then after that cutoff point where we've got enough laws in that our society is now live, like we pushed it out of beta into live mode. Now we go to some super majority, and I can be probably convinced what that percentage should be, but my gut would be somewhere between 55 and 60%.
Yeah. Well, and one cool thing to think of is, so 60% of 30 is 18. It's 18 point something, but it's basically 18. And so it's not even some crazy number out of the 30. I realized that when I went to Google and I said, what's 60% of 30? Society doesn't seem to think that the murder or rape of non-human.
Yeah, exactly, Phil. Yeah. It's like pretty objectively wrong when you just think murder and rape, but that's just because where we are, like, our biases are. It's like it's pretty crazy to me about like saying the rape and murder of animals, but it's not so obvious to society. So what's objective? Nothing really. It's all subjective. It's just how obvious it is to the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so I guess we can touch on abortion for a quick sec. I basically know where you stand on abortion, and you know where I stand. We moved it from 12 to 20. Can you, off the top of your head, can you think of cases after 20 that should? So, if there was a born baby, and it's alive and it's there, and somebody was the mother of that baby or that baby were about to be harmed, is there a way legally? They're both in a burning building, and you have equal access to get to both, and both can't move. She's a quadriplegic with weak muscles. They're both in a burning building. Do you ever view that there is a certain person you go to first? If they're equal distance, you just grab who you grab?
newborn and a mother were the two people.
Yeah, they're in separate rooms, but neither of them can get out on their own. There's only
Who
time to
would I
save them.
grab, or who like
Uh,
should laws say one should
legally,
grab?
what should the regulation be for the firemen?
Oh, for the firemen. Okay. Uh,
Assuming that one might not make it.
I don't think there should be a law for that.
Okay, but do you think with like two people show up from a car wreck and one's covered in swastika tattoos but is close to dying, the other one has no swastika
No,
tattoos, but like do they just like they go for the one that needs the most help or is closest to them?
I don't think there should be a law for this at all. Like
Or a regulation. So, like when you're trained to be a firefighter, should you be trained to go with your morals and go, this baby's 5 feet away from the mother. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go a little further to save that baby. Or the mother's 5 feet away from the baby, but the mother has more value. I get to choose my own moral system. Or should there be a regulation where when you accept this job, the job tells you, grab your first person and run?
yeah. Um, I grab your first person and run is my gut there. Like, are you saying is there any situation that we would want the answer not to be grab your first person and run? Should we like a child has longer to live? So it's like if it's a 90-year-old and a child is 2 feet further away, you would go past the 90-year-old to save the child. And that's going to
Yeah,
be
like legally,
sure.
should that be in place? Like, so morally, I'd rather save a child than a 90-year-old. But legally, I think it's probably dicier to let somebody.
Yeah.
And I only point that out. We don't even need to talk about that any further because it wasn't until somewhat recently, and I don't know where I stand on this, that I recognize that when people say only have the abortion in the case if the mother's life is at risk, if you're like a day or two before birth and the baby's perfectly healthy and the mom was perfectly healthy, and now the baby is going to cause death to the mother, and cutting the baby out will cause death to the mother. The only thing that could save the mother is like an injection that kills the baby. I know this makes no sense.
Makes sense.
But okay, does it? Okay. Do aside from our personal moral wants, like we would view a baby versus a 90-year-old, is there a reason our there should be a set rule that we'd save the mother over that about to be born baby?
Mm, hmm. Maybe. I think maybe.
Okay, because I have no clue. I don't even know what
Yeah,
I
and
think.
it's like to get it out of abortion, it would be like, let me just think. It's my whole thing with the abortion thing is like um, I have a set of criteria that I've gone over with in a separate stream where it over determines like what should be the case in order for abortion to be like not allowed,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like, yeah. And so it doesn't like, I think all of these other things like, oh, the person wasn't aware of the risk or whatever of becoming pregnant, or they were forced into it or something. These are all sort of like I'm open for discussion. My position isn't quite as crystal clear on all of it. And I think there's like a lot of gray area. So, okay. So we're in the gray area, and we're
Yeah.
talking about like risk to mother, like huge health risk to mother, and only we know nothing else about the situation, about how the pregnancy happened or whatever, other than the only way to save the life of the mother is by killing the baby. I think that should be allowed.
Killing the baby to save the mother. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I probably do too. I morally definitely do. Legally, as far as every citizen being given protection. Do I view a preborn human at any point as a citizen? I do. But having ways that we choose certain people in certain cases over others, my gut instinct is to go with what you just said. Let's find one case. Well, that is a case. Let's find one other case where. Is there any case where the mother's life is not at risk that you would allow the termination of a fetus after 20 weeks? So, woman gets kidnapped and sexually assaulted, and she is found by the police fully pregnant a day before giving birth, and she will be giving birth to this child that's part the person that kidnapped her, and she doesn't want that child to exist in the world because she'll hate that it's out in the world and she can't be with it, and she doesn't want to be with it because she doesn't want to look at it. But she never had an opportunity to get an abortion one
Right.
day before birth.
One day. uh, okay. I didn't quite catch all the details.
Yeah, so she was
I
just
don't know which are relevant.
yeah. It's just the fact that she was kidnapped and
Yeah.
she did not choose to get pregnant in any way.
Right. And then what's the reason for the abortion? Just doesn't want it?
Yeah.
No
So it's
risk
two
or
things.
whatever?
So it's genetically hers, and so that's why she doesn't want it to exist in the world where she knows she gave up this thing that's partially hers, but it's partially his, and she
Yeah.
doesn't want that thing to be living with her.
Yeah.
So with her
I
or
would
away
say,
from her. Yeah.
okay. So like here's where I go in my mind to try to get myself to answer the question is like, what's the analogy with just like adults hooking themselves up to themselves or whatever. So it's like if I have sex with somebody or if I'm a woman and I do, it's like I'm forcing somebody, the baby, to be hooked up to me, or like, right? Because I created the situation where that I knew that was a risk that would happen. So I forced that thing to get hooked up to me. So I have some level of responsibility to that thing. Whereas if you just kidnap me and hook me up to an adult or to somebody else, I didn't create that set of circumstances. And so I should be able to remove myself from that person in the way that creates the least amount of harm. And it's like, let's say you hook me up to somebody else. I shouldn't be able to just like sit there and hum and haw and like a year later, like, or let's say I had a window where I could do that before there was any harm to that person. And I let that window pass just because I was, lazy or something. I think that I would want there to be some legal incentive to take the action in that window versus like after that window happens. And that's sort of like what happens with like the 12 weeks, or if it's 20 weeks or whatever that we're doing. I think it should be 12, but if it's 20, like that's what we're saying. It's like there's this window that happens, and if you miss it, like there's a legal like thing incentivizing you to do that, so you're not creating harm. But if I didn't have the ability to do that, I still have like autonomy over my body, and I should be able to like protect myself if I don't have that responsibility condition to the other thing, and I didn't have the ability to reduce the harm. You know what I mean? So yeah. So all of that being said, yes, I would be okay with the abortion in that case.
Oh, you would? Okay, gotcha. For some reason, I was
because I don't have responsibility. Like I don't have responsibility.
Well, the part that threw me off is I thought you were saying she should be able to remove it with as little harm as possible. And so by abortion, do you mean like a forced labor or a C-section?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you meant
If
abortion
that's an
as in,
option. I thought you were, yeah, if that's not an option
yeah.
or whatever, it's like
Like
the only
so.
option is a way that I thought you said the only option was a way that the injection, maybe that was the previous hypothetical.
Oh,
But
that
yeah.
was the previous one. So in
Okay.
this one, the doctor could say, "Oh, you don't want it. We could do a C-section or
Ah,
an induced labor and put it up for adoption." And she
ah,
goes, "No, I don't want it to exist. I want
no,
it
no, no,
dead.
no, no,
She
no,
shouldn't get to choose to have it
no, no,
dead."
no, no,
Okay,
no.
gotcha.
But, but she should be able to say at any point, like, get this out of me,
Okay.
and like do that in the least harm way.
So if it was 20 weeks pregnant, or let's say, so you want the cutoff to be 12, let's say 15 weeks pregnant. If she was 15 weeks pregnant, but just saved from this kidnapping,
Yep.
and the baby is not viable,
Mhm.
then because she was kidnapped in that case, she should be able to have the abortion that ends with the
Yes.
ending of the life of the child. Okay,
Yes.
so what if she was 24 weeks? It's viable. It would obviously be healthier and do better if it stayed in the womb for another 16
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Would you say the C-section or induced labor to get a preemie born, and then hopefully the preemie has a good life or whatever, but that we can obligate that preemie to be born early versus obligating the woman to let the preemie cook a little longer in a good cooking way?
Yeah. Don't don't obligate the woman to cook it longer.
Okay, but it's
Yeah.
acceptable to have the preemie um, if we can know that there's risks for
This
people
is
being
like
born premature.
bodily autonomy applies in this case,
Okay.
in my view. Yeah.
No, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm torn on it. In a sense, not necessarily with this case. This case is wonky, but in other cases, but I mean, obviously, this is a specific case. So yeah, cool. Okay. So I was just trying to think of if we wanted to bring in further laws to get specific with, because right now our cutoff in the society is 20 weeks. So I just wanted to pick your
Yeah.
brain a little bit to
Well,
see if
I'll give
we should.
one more example of like just to
Yeah.
show where this bodily autonomy thing wouldn't apply is like, so let's say you're in the same situation, you are forcibly impregnated and had no opportunity, you were held hostage or whatever for the first 12 weeks or something. So then I get back home, or the woman gets back home, and they decide not to have an abortion right away, and it gets to 24 weeks or whatever. Now, no. Now I would say no, because you had an opportunity to do it earlier, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, that's
There's a certain amount of time for the bodily autonomy to factor in.
yeah. Like
'Cause-
the point at which you get home, you had no opportunity to end it with the least amount of harm.
Mhm.
Once you wait, so in this case,
And
I
or
waited.
remove. Once
Yeah,
it's viable, remove no
Yeah.
matter what, right? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. That's the least amount. Like
Well, like, so what if you could end its life, let's say 30 weeks or whatever, in
Yeah.
any given situation? You could kill it and then remove the body parts vaginally, or you could C-section and remove it alive, but she doesn't want to have her stomach cut. Do you value the bodily autonomy of how the body is affected in that way?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and I don't. There'd be some how significant is the harm trade-off. I think we'd have to set a bar there. Like if it was a 99.9 risk of death, but not 100% risk of death to the mother, it's like that would certainly cross the bar, and you should be able to. But if it was like, I don't know, a 20% risk of infection or something, or like a horrible scar, it's like, is that below the bar? Probably. I don't know.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. What a complicated mess. This would be so
Yeah.
much easier if babies popped out of holes in the ground. It's like it'll never be solved. The topic of abortion.
Yeah. And as I'm thinking, like, where should that bar be? I think that bar should be fairly low, to be honest with you. Like, legally, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like, I think if you qualify for the condition of bodily autonomy, it's like, what sort of obligations do we want to put on people where they aren't responsible and have like just to protect themselves, or like have the freedom to do what, do with their body what they want, like, and should I like, in the same way, you shouldn't force me to get a permanent scar just to protect some other unrelated person's life. So probably that scar doesn't cross the threshold for me. It's like this, I wouldn't force the C-section. What I might force is like them to meet with somebody who would make them understand that this baby is conscious, and like just tell them about the facts of this scenario. I think like
Mm-hmm.
undergoing 5 minutes of like explanation from an expert on the topic about the moral implications and the pain that's going to be caused and whatever, like that would be below my bar. But yes, my bar is pretty low, but I think that a scar even, or like a slight risk in an infection for a procedure, or increased risk to the life or something, I think that would be below my, I would not force them to do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's see what we can fit in here in 20 minutes. Circumcision, I think we both agree on to do away with. Would there be a certain number that would affect that? Like if all of a sudden there was like some crazy epidemic of AIDS or something, and that had some effect on it. Can you, like, I think I've heard in Africa the circumcisions actually have a good impact on survival rates and whatnot of AIDS.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. I think that's just Africa though, because of how prevalent AIDS is, and I just blanketly say Africa, but it's probably certain sections of Africa, probably not South Africa. But is there anything like that where just once it becomes more of
Definitely.
a concern, it changes?
I think so.
Okay. I don't know what it would be for me or where that would be, but yeah, I don't know. It'd probably take numbers to look at to even ponder that one much further. Okay, so really quick, probably not the best topic to do over the next short 15 minutes, but trans surgeries. That's the next on this list here. What I gave the random number of 16 to have it just be separate from adulthood. What would the lowest number you would go, like, would you go as low as the consensus goes?
Go as okay, so yeah. Go as low. Okay, so what are we talking about specifically?
Let's just say top surgery for right now. Would you go as low as the scientific consensus or psychiatric consensus or whatever medical consensus?
For a lot, like with parental consent, you mean, or
Let's do both. So you want the age of adulthood to be 17,
right?
and so is there any age that without parental consent, and then what is the age with parental consent?
Okay, good question. So I don't think it should be any different from any other medical procedure. So like, let's just get some clarity on that first of all. So like, do you need parental consent to fix a broken leg or something? Like, what, or like, what if I had to cut off a leg to save a life or something, or like or some bad thing or something?
I think
Do I
you
need?
do need it, but
You
should
do?
you? Yeah, like if yeah, I don't know, to save a life. I don't even know if they'd let. In some cases, I don't think they'd let the kid or the parent decide anything. They would just do it. But if
Yeah.
they came to ask, I don't think they would say to the kid, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like if it was a thing where they say, if we do this surgery, there's a 90% chance you'll live. If we don't do it, there's only a 10% chance you'll live. Do you want to take that risk? And if you get that 10% chance of living, you'll have your legs. But,
Right.
like, would you let a 10-year-old decide that? I think that you'd let the parent decide that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I generally think that like, medical procedures should go to the parent or guardian or whatever, for their discretion, plus like the doctor's recommendation with the possibility of overriding their decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like just an example of where I would want it to be overridden would be, isn't it like, is it Amish communities or something that don't allow blood transfusions or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
So it's like if they had a kid who can't consent on their own, I wouldn't want a parent's decision to say no blood transfusions.
Okay.
I would want the doctor to be able to override that decision. But I think I would want a parent to be able to weigh in where it's like there is one of those trade-offs where it's like, yeah, the slightly riskier proceed, like we have in 90% you'll be fine, but you'll have your legs, or 95% you'll be fine. It's like, maybe I'd want the parent to be able to decide there. Mm-hmm. So there's like, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's look at a couple things to see if we have if we can create a separation between something like a trans surgery and something like a broken leg. Let's have this hypothetical. Let's say Canada. Canada, let's say out of nowhere, for some reason, 50% of 13-year-old girls have no boobs at all, and 50% have really big boobs. Okay. And the 50% that have no boobs at all start saying they want boobs, and 90% of that 50% start killing themselves. And we see this happen year after year and generate, all this like because they don't have this. Would we view it as a 13-year-old instead of waiting a couple of years to get boobs? Because a large percent of them start killing themselves, that it would be worth it in our society to start giving them breast implants at 13? I don't even know the answer to this because it's wild and crazy, but what do you think?
It would definitely be something I'd want on the table, like for mm-hmm. discussion. Like you'd want to weigh in other things we're not really talking about, like what are the long-term effects and on the quality of their life, and how much regret is there. Like, I think for decisions, here's how I view like minor consent. It's like, so me looking back to myself as a kid, what are the things I would want to have decided, to being able to decide for myself, and what are the things I would have wanted my parents to decide for me? Mm-hmm. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, so I would want that applied. So with that ability to retrospect, like how I would want decisions, it's like, would I have trusted myself to like be able to decide on a face tattoo? Man, I'm glad I didn't have that decision or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Trusted myself. But like, would I have trusted myself to decide on a 1-inch dinosaur tattoo on my ankle? Like, yeah, come on. Yeah, that's fine. I would have been fine. So for something like the boob thing, yeah, it's, yeah. So are you proposing that like there would be no parental consent or something, or what's like the two situations?
Either way, there can be parental consent, but the question is, so like if we know there's a likelihood that they're just going to develop normally, but like some girls are a little delayed, but because of, I mean, I gave a wild number of like 90% start killing themselves, but what if it was even just a small, like what if 90% of them talked about killing themselves, but only 5% did kill themselves? But 5%, that's a lot. That's a large amount of 13-year-old girls killing themselves. Like how much does one's devastation affect allowing something so permanent in a sense? Obviously a boob job can be reversed, but it's something where there will be permanent scarring. It's a surgery, so it can have a risk. I don't know how many, like at what point would we care of how many 13-year-old girls died in surgery of doing the boob jobs. I mean, it's probably a rare thing. But
here's the kind of things I would want to think about is like, is there a way that we can have to psychologically assess whether or not there would be like a significant benefit to this person by allowing the the breast implant surgery. So
Mm-hmm.
so if there is, then I think that would be fine. So with
Mm.
the appropriate consent of the parent and the kid, I think like in that case, like if I'm looking back, would I have trusted myself? I think I would want both consents in that case. I would want to have the parent and the kid have to
Mm-hmm.
consent. I wouldn't want just the parent to be able to decide, yeah, we're going to give my daughter a breast implants to reduce the risk. I would want the kid's decision at 13 to 15 to weigh in on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires all three of parent, kid, and doctor is where my gut would
Gotcha.
be.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so complicated. I don't even know. Okay. And so,
So, and that would require there to be able to be a way to assess like the medical, like I'll call it necessity. It's maybe not quite the right word, but the medical
mhm.
like likelihood that this will improve the quality of life for this person or reduce some major risk, like a psychological condition where you would want to commit suicide. So
Mhm.
if we have the ability to like diagnose this to some degree of certainty in the medical community,
Mhm.
then I think that, and there's a strong enough benefit, then yeah, like I think
Okay.
we should allow that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Have you personally researched the topic enough that you would be shocked if in like 10 years we look back and recognize that things were maybe done poorly or some things were, or we get a
On
different
trans
outcome?
now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Hopping back over. I just wonder, like, similar to how I was talking about, like, in the 90s, people were throwing Ritalin out to
Mhm.
ADD kids like candy. Um, I just wonder, like, how accurate the studies are on, like, how many people get, their breasts removed and then, like, which ones are followed up with versus are all the ones that happen to be followed up with go, like, yeah, I'm glad I did it 5 years ago, where to be on a study, you have to come back in and talk about it, where maybe the people that might regret it don't come back in and talk about it.
Mm, yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's all fairly new, but there are some good studies out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I have some good ones too. I can share. I don't have them pulled up or
Mm-hmm.
handy, but I can find them, and we can maybe go into this some of the
Yeah, that'd be
research on a
great.
different
I mean, unlike
stream.
a lot of people, I have
Like,
no want for any outcome of any opinion I
yeah,
have. So,
one thing I'll say that is true that I can recall is like a lot of this study, like you can point to a lot of studies and say like, oh, there's conflicting findings, and so it's like, how certain really are we? But if you
mm-hmm.
go into the study design, like one of the things you'll find is that um, when the question is asked, or when the groups are segmented by like people who um uh sorry, well, oh my gosh, what was it? It was something about like people that wanted the surgery and got it versus didn't want. Yeah, I can't remember. There's some like, anyway, there were some subgroups that were combined in a lot of the studies that led to like it appearing as though there was a conflict in the data, but it was really just a different subgroup, completely different subgroup. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you factored out the studies that didn't like split out those different subgroups, the results were a lot more consistent. So, but obviously, like, yeah, the medical consensus might change. We might find new things or whatever, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I am confident enough in like the amount that this is being researched that I would go with the medical consensus around this kind of thing and not like say it's
Gotcha.
too early. I would say like, yeah, it might change, but there's enough like certainty, I guess, behind it, that
Mm-hmm.
and enough benefit that comes out of having this, like having the ability to do these kinds of things, that I would say green light.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'd like to go through those studies. I'd like to read up on it more. I try to see both sides of everything. It just seems that there are a decent number of intelligent adults that seem to be thinking in a good way about a lot of things in my mind that point to various things like the social contagion aspect of it, where you can see like as soon as these people start popping up here, then with an age group and in a school, it's just all of a sudden everybody becomes this thing. So what's the likelihood that if there's so many people becoming trans or non-binary or whatever in a small amount of time, that it's a social contagion? And then um and then just like various different things about, you'll hear that psychiatrists like legally aren't even allowed to say, hey, let's look into this and see if you really are this or whatever. If you don't use like affirming words or whatever, then you'll get fired. And so a lot of these things might just be nonsense propaganda. But if some of it's true, where people feel like because of how polarized the topic is, that they need to like side with a certain group. I guess I worry about the validity of the consensus, and so I don't know what the alternative is. But we're talking about children, so it just makes me more nervous than other consensuses.
You're worried about the medical consensus that like getting some gender affirming surgery would have positive outcomes.
Um, um, yes. Well, I mean, I guess the reason separately from the things that I just said, the reason I would be concerned about the true understanding of the outcome is if one of the things we're looking at is suicidal ideation, which just refers to the thinking about it and declaring you're interested in the suicide. Like we don't know how much of that is teenage hormone talking versus what actually would happen. And so if people say they're suicidal and then they get on puberty blockers or they get surgery and then they say I'm not, we have to decide what that even means. That's a complicated topic. We also have to decide is it a correlation or causation with the suicidal part? Does this happen to be a human that feels off about their body and also separately feels suicidal? Or is it somebody that feels off about their body and because of feeling off about their body that makes them suicidal? I think that's a complicated element that most people don't look at. And obviously there's professionals out in the world that they spend their lives figuring this stuff out. So me having a quick thought means nothing. But I just think if I ever see a movie involving some suicide or something, and I just think like, oh, well, if that was me in that situation, what happened to them wouldn't make me kill myself, because I don't have a desire to kill myself. And so something in their brain makes them want to not live anymore. I feel like that's its own thing. And that if you have other things that kind of push that, then you do. But I guess I don't know. Now I'm just rambling. But I guess I just have concerns with anything involving children and things being permanent.
Yeah, but there's other procedures that you're fine with for children, right? Like the broken leg one, or removing legs to save their life or something like.
Yeah, I'd say most restorative things, correct. And I view that as slightly different. I don't know if you were there when I was explaining a thought I had, where basically if I have a best friend, well, I'm a bad example because I have no hair. Let's imagine I had luscious locks. If I had a best friend that had cancer and they had to shave their head and I wanted to make them feel good and I shaved my head, that's a thing people do and that's cool. But if I had a friend that had a deformed face because of something that happened to them previously and it was unfixable, they just had a deformed face. And if I was 13 or 14 and I wanted to make myself look like them so they can not feel alone, I shouldn't be able to go in, no matter how much it would give me pleasure and I could declare I want it. I shouldn't be able to go in and say, please deform my face to make it look like this person as a 13-year-old. But as a 13-year-old, I could shave my head to look like a cancer patient. And also as a 13-year-old, if I got in a car wreck and I became deformed like my friend, it would be good for them to restore me to what I was. So I definitely see, I think there will be flaws in this thinking, little bits of it, but I
Yeah.
think restoring to the natural makes more sense when it comes to deciding for children.
Okay, but I don't think that's relevant in the case of the. I would consider it more, and so I'm going to also bring in Contrarian's comment here about elective versus emergency procedures. So I'll give you an example where it's not an emergency, it is an elective that is more similar, which would be some sort of, let's just say you had a high likelihood of breast cancer becoming a permanent problem in your life and having a removal of your breasts in order to solve that problem as a minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's not an emergency. This is something that we think is likely going to develop or something over time. And you're choosing to handle it now to create some like likelihood of a better future outcome for yourself. That's not an emergency procedure. It's an elective procedure, but it can be medically recommended by a doctor and consented to by the parent and child. What do you think about that sort of a procedure? It's not
Yeah,
restored.
so I would view that as restorative in a sense. You're restoring the body to a non-cancerous body, although it doesn't have cancer yet. It's a high likelihood or whatever. I think you would have to look at. I don't think it should happen right away with an assumption. It should be viewed as like with our knowledge, we can see there's a likelihood of this tumor appearing within this amount of time. There's a 90% chance that that if we stop it here, this is the best place to stop it. Yeah, I would say anything that is preventing harm. I don't know for sure if we should do it in advance. If we could see that somebody had like insanely large breasts and their spine was actually being harmed and they were getting worse like scoliosis because of the breast, then you would do the breast reduction to restore them or to prevent the body from being distorted. So similar with the breast one and the future cancer, that one's just so complicated. I'd be curious, is what we're removing, because I mean every time a baby girl is born, if you removed whatever detail is breast ducts, you could do that to everybody, and therefore you would never have breast cancer again. I don't think we should do that. Similar to
So the
circumcisions.
example in this case would be the medical community decides that like if certain conditions are true of a person, we want the ability to recommend this medical procedure where they remove their breasts, and we believe that it'll create better outcomes on average for the people that do it in cancer prevention or whatever it is, right?
That's tricky, but I lean towards being in favor of that
Yeah.
because it's I almost consider it restorative, but yeah,
Like
because I
you can
want
say
to.
that, but like,
'Cause I
how is
want
that
to.
restorative?
Well, if there was if there was a piece of detectable cancer and you remove it, it's restorative. So I guess it would depend on how accurate their information is that there is going to be that piece of cancer.
Well, I mean, it's the consensus medical recommendation. So as much as you rely on that for anything, you'd be relying on it.
Well, I would only rely on the consensus recommendation if it was based in some kind of a reality of there being a cancer that's going to appear. But let's just
Yeah,
go with it.
but even if the cancer isn't there yet,
Um, for the most part, I don't think we should do things in advance like that. I mean, that's what people say about circumcision. You are more likely to get like some kind of disease or I don't know, some issues if you have foreskin than if you do not. But it's such a small percentage that it doesn't matter. But the same thing, like you're less likely to get your hand infected if you cut your hand off at birth. So it really would come down to
what are the odds that the medical community is going to have a consensus recommendation on removing hands to prevent hand cancer?
right. There wouldn't be. I'm just like I'm going off. I'm not just going blindly off of the medical consensus. It's the medical consensus that I'd have to hear a number basically, where if they saw enough factors that they would say that there is a
Yeah.
95% chance that this girl, if we don't do it this year, if we do it next year, she's going to be more likely to get cancer and die.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Then sure,
I
okay.
like that. So you're saying like medical thing is fine. But we want it to be. We don't want to just let them recommend whatever whim. There has to be. It has to be tied to some like high enough likelihood of a positive enough outcome, basically, or
Well, in this case, a high enough likelihood of something physical that's harmful that we can remove.
But like, yeah, but it doesn't like. Does the fact that a cancer cell is in that like factor in at all? Like, or
If I knew much about cancer cells and I viewed that as a problem, from my understanding, we all have cancer cells, and different things lead the cancer cells to growing or not growing. So it's kind of complicated. Um, but
like,
either way, let's just go with my answer that sounds silly, where I just say yes, I'm in favor of that.
okay,
And I'm calling it a restorative, but let's just ignore that part.
sure.
I'm
So
going with yes.
yeah, so that's like sort of the same logic for me as why you would be in favor of the trans surgery. It's like it's leading to positive outcome at a high enough rate that it's the medical community recommends it.
Yeah, and so in my mind, it's not about the positive outcome. If now if you let 13-year-olds get tattoos, um, it's going to be funny, that's for sure. But I wouldn't trust my own thoughts at 13, whether it's tattoos or anything involving gender. I don't even know if I thought of what a gender was when I was 13, other than I looked at ladies and I thought they were attractive. But I shouldn't have decided tattoos. And if we realize that, oh, there seems to be a positive outcome, people have their lives are improved this much when we ask them after their tattoos. A couple years later, they're all like, yes, I'm so glad I got it. I feel good. But let's say it's like 70% of them feel great, but 30%
by
wish they
positive,
didn't.
it can also be like removing a negative. Also, like I just mean.
Hmm?
So in the case of trans, it's actually more of that, right? It's not about creating a better life. It's about not creating a shitty life for somebody.
For
Where
sure, and that's yeah, and I guess that's where the prediction of the cancer comes in, is the prediction of like the suicide or whatever.
right.
Yeah, no, it's really tricky.
How about here? Let me
Uh-huh.
get this one might be super close. What if there's a child who's about to grow a horn on their head? And they don't
Okay.
like it's gonna have like we have reason to believe that it's gonna be like they don't want this horn. It's like it might cause them like significant mental distress or whatever.
Hmm.
But it will just grow naturally if left alone. Like should there be an ability for doctor, parent, child to combine consent in order to remove the horn, to remove the or to treat it before the horn grows?
Um, yeah, I would say something being restorative. Yeah.
But what's there's nothing restored. Like all they're doing is they're giving them a drug so that the horn doesn't grow. That's
Yeah, so like if we recognize that humans don't grow horns, and that one is going to, that we saw. I mean, the best thing to look at probably is the precocious puberty blocker. The puberty blockers for precocious puberty. It's if somebody starts going through puberty at like 7 or 8, and the
okay.
puberty blockers are
I'll change
3.
it. I'll change it. So
Okay.
what if there was a young girl that was about to grow a penis?
Okay. Okay.
So human penises grow on humans,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah, so I'm torn. I don't know exactly what they do now. I think it's different than what they used to do if somebody was born intersex. Um, honestly, I
again,
think that should.
this is like an 11-year-old who's like,
Oh,
oh,
okay, so they're
you
not
see
born
this happen?
intersex, but then this happens out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, I mean, whatever my answer is probably what led people to do what they did with intersex born kids, and then we realized that they did the wrong thing. Um, because with those cases, I think you should just recognize they were born intersex, and then they get to decide when they're older, not puberty, but when they're adults. They just have a weird, shitty situation, and I might change my mind. The 11-year-old girl that in all ways of looking at this person is a girl, that the chromosomes are
Yeah.
perfectly fine. They're not mixed up. She starts growing a penis. I saw this thing where a teenage girl and her mom both went in to get nose jobs at the same time, and I thought it was so despicable. And it was because she got picked on in school and she didn't want to. And I was like so torn on it because I'm like, no, like life throws you lemons sometimes. Go through high school with a large nose you don't like. But should you go through high school with a penis? Fuck. I mean, you did good here. You did good. I don't think. If I were to say that you should remove it, it would be based on a couple things. It would be based on knowing that everything we know of non-intersex true females, that like their body is designed female, has this added thing. It's not that they're missing the vagina; they just have this added thing. I'm leaning towards the removing it, but I would also, the outcomes would possibly change my mind in the future. Okay, let me know. Did you get me? Am I stuck?
Well, maybe. So do you think that trans women are women? Like, do you think that psychologically they are, like, there is a condition where you can more associate with the traits and the values and the whatever of what society calls women?
Yeah, it would depend on what people mean by it. Like, in my mind, gender and sex are kind of synonymous. I haven't been convinced otherwise.
Oh,
but,
really?
Yeah, but I could probably be convinced otherwise in a sense. In fact, I hear people that I agree with all the time separate them, but then try to link. Anyways, here's how I look at it.
Okay.
Somebody's born female, and they say, "I feel like a male. I'm a trans man." I would want to. I'm curious to see that if some parents were stranded on an island, had a kid, raised that kid, parents died off, that kid's alone on the island, born with a vagina, has never seen a penis in their life. What aspects of what would make a person trans? How is it going to affect that person's thinking if they're not around any other humans? They have a bunch of okay. So that's my first concern, is like they're not going to look down and go, something I've never seen I wish was there. So the idea is that there is a mental state that within your society, when you see this other group, you think, I would feel better if my body looked like theirs. I'm very upset that I was born with this body when you see the other body.
Yeah, among other things, not just that my body, but that, like
So, because I also want in a lot of people factor in interests and stuff. Like, I personally hate football, and I'm a man. I don't have any care for cars, so I think all the interests have to be removed, right?
Well, no, I don't think so. Like,
oh, okay.
When you see some, oh man, this might require a whole other discussion. Actually, I don't realize we disagree this much on this topic, but this could be interesting. But like, okay, you see someone walking. I would call myself
possibly undereducated on this topic. I don't know if we will disagree by the time we're done.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you're just like sitting there enjoying a coffee on a rocking chair on your front porch, and somebody walks down the street, and you say like to yourself, "Oh, like there goes a woman walking by." Like, what made you say that about them?
Let me preface that by, if I woke up tomorrow in a woman's body, I would just live as a woman. I don't feel like a man. I just wanted to start that off. So just so you can know, like, that's the level I've thought about this. And I ask people all the time. And usually when I ask people, they say they don't. Like, do you feel like a man specifically?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. If you woke up in a woman's body, would you, not that this disproves any trans things, but would you just go like, oh man, this is kind of weird, but I'm going
I have no
to
idea.
live my life as an attractive woman? Or would you
Maybe.
want to make yourself look as manly as possible? Like, would you become trans, or do you feel like your mindset would make you go, oh, dang it, like I feel like a man, but I'm just gonna
Yeah, I'm
do this
not
one.
100% sure, but I feel like I would probably become trans. Like I would try to get
Interesting.
back to being a man, I think.
What if you were just like the hottest lady? Like, let's just say you're like a Jessica Alba in her prime.
Yeah. I don't know.
Uh,
I don't know if I was like attracted enough to myself. Like I don't know,
I
honestly.
just feel like I would. Well, anyways, okay.
Yeah.
Let me answer your question though. So, okay, a woman's walking down the street. Yeah, yeah, we have our. I mean, I guess I just have everything in my mind of what I think of that would make me think that somebody's a lady. So, if there were boobs, I would think it's a
Yeah.
lady. And not necessarily long hair, but just if they looked like
That
what
would
I
probably
think.
like increase your credence that it's a woman, probably on average. It's like you just see someone from the back walking away. All you see is like it's a backpack and a trench coat and just long hair. Do you assume it, and a smaller
Yeah,
frame? Like,
yeah, yeah. The more it looks like a lady, the more I think it's whatever I think
yep,
of as a lady. So if somebody was very like androgynous or whatever,
yep,
that it gets to the level where I'm like I'm unsure, but
yep,
it doesn't usually matter to me unless I need to tell a police officer, oh, this man or this woman robbed this
yeah.
place. But yeah, anyways,
And
yeah,
similarly, like if you didn't see them, but you were on like a conference call or something and you heard the voice, and you would probably
yeah,
make assumptions based on that. If you were like in a a Slack channel or talking to somebody without voice or image, maybe based on just like the types of things they said about themselves or something like that. Like they
mhm.
said, my husband, for example, your credence would go up that they're
In our
probably
society, yeah, yeah, I would assume, yeah,
more likely that somebody is a straight woman than a gay man on average.
yeah,
But like,
exactly.
yeah. So okay, so bunch of like things that could be true about somebody that like, and all of them kind of build up to this picture that you have about like if this person is a woman or if this person is a man.
Mhm.
And um that's like what, like to me that's what gender is. It's like what society, like all of these things added up to, like you're not wrong. It's like you have a vision of what woman is and things that fall into that and things that fall out of that, and you could like, the sum of all of those things is whether you're a woman or a man, basically.
Sort of. I would call that perceived gender. Because when I see these things based on my society, I assume it. But an individual that I might perceive as whatever I'm perceiving, but is like androgynous of some kind, but I can detect like what I think the likelihood of the gender is. Um, that might be a person born female that looks male because she prefers to have short hair and gender rebellious, let's say. But she feels like a woman herself. She's not calling herself trans.
Mhm.
Um, those change details about how she's acting doesn't make her gender what I perceive it as.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, it should. It sort of should,
Mhm.
but in a sense, it sort of shouldn't. But I don't think maybe what you described is what gender is if the individual feels that way.
This, I think the psychological traits are a big part of that as well, and those are just some of the other factors to consider. It's like if you knew how somebody felt about themselves inside, like that would be another big thing. But like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
don't, to me it's like we have this conception of what a man is and what a woman is, and that's built by society. Like that might be different in
Mm-hmm.
a different culture or something, but like we have just this perception just based on our culture and based on just even the life you've lived, like
Mm-hmm.
what you mean when you're thinking of a man. And it's not tied to DNA. Like nobody
Mm-hmm.
thinks about like the XX or the XY when they're just like picturing if someone is a woman or a man walking down the street. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Does
have
it does this category benefit us?
all, well, we've found utility in it through just like our culture. Yeah. The same as any category.
Hmm. Like, let's just say that sex was the only thing that was a category, and it was based on DNA. So the this person has the gametes that you have your own separate reproduction, and therefore that's how we classify things. If we only had that, can you describe to me what the benefit of the added separation of gender is?
Yeah, of course, because we treat people differently based on their role in society. Same
Well,
as
so
like
if you
somebody
treat
says that they're a chef. It's
mm,
right. Like they're saying that certain things are true about them in their life. And it's like, there's
mm.
there's utility of classifying them in that bucket. Same way as like, if somebody says I am a man, there's like utility in classifying themselves in that bucket.
Can you explain that one though? Like why is there
Same way as there's like we identify what a flagpole is and what a tree is. It's like we have these buckets so we can communicate with each other and what we mean by things. And some
but yeah,
buckets have
but if
like
this person
utility.
across the street from me, let's ignore what they were born as. We'll
Mhm.
just know that they're not intersex. They were
Yep.
born male or female. Does them identifying as the gender, in what way should that or does that affect me or anybody else?
Not sure yet.
Like, so if they the existence of their sex also mostly doesn't matter unless I want to like make babies with them or something. But it just that just happens to exist. But what about them would there be a benefit to their gender, especially how they view it themselves? How would that ever affect me? If I'm attracted to them, it wouldn't matter if I'm normally attracted to born females and then this is somebody born male that looks like a female. I would be attracted to them. I've seen plenty of trans women that I find very attractive. So when I look at somebody, I could be attracted to them whether I know their gender identity or not.
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out what somebody's gender could do that would make it necessary for gender to exist. And an example I want to give you is just because I don't care if it exists doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. There's a lot of a lot of people on the internet are really into sexual orientations. So there'll be like various branches of different things. Like there's a type of asexual called cupiosexual,
Okay.
and and there's like 14 different branches of asexual. There's all these different things, and people have interest in talking about them or whatever. But those existing don't affect me in any way. Like I don't need to know what somebody's orientation is
Mhm.
to affect me. So those could never exist, and everything would be fine, I think. And those can exist, and people that get joy
You don't use
get.
those words in your life either. So it's like
Mhm.
you do because you don't even know what they are or what like they have probably
Yeah.
very little relevance. But I feel
So
like
how does gender have relevance?
because in our culture we have like differences in the way we think about we've created these two buckets the same way we've created like
Mhm.
flag poles versus a chair. And it's like on average if I'm wanting to climb something to go up high and get a better view, I'm gonna climb a flagpole. Maybe that's a bad example, but or if I
Mhm.
want to like be patriotic, it's like I should think about like finding a flagpole rather than finding a chair. And so in the
Okay.
same way, like we have all these things about like what we mean about women. And so on the average, it's like if you want to know if something is true about somebody, it's like there are certain things that are more likely to be true about them when they are a woman.
Interesting. Okay. I can't necessarily see how it would play out in.
So I'll say one other thing that might answer some questions is like
Okay.
I could identify as a man and be wrong.
Okay, I could identify as a man. So you're saying
Because
there are
what I
enough
mean by
things you
man
could
is
do
that
in your life where you do womanly things that you've identified wrong.
yeah, like so if you accept my premise that what a man is like the sum of all of these social traits that we put into one bucket or the other, and they might have like a weight, like you might view your um, like your like belief about whether you're a man or a woman a lot higher than whether you have long hair or not or whatever. But it's like if you sum all those things up, um, like I could say like I view myself as a man, but all of my social traits or I'll use the opposite. Like I could say I view myself as a woman, but like if you look at me and like everything I do is just like more like what a man does,
Mm,
then I'm wrong about my gender identity. I am like I feel like a woman,
interesting.
but I am my gender is man.
Yeah, in our society, your gender. So okay, so when I say
That's how I
perceived
view it. I
gender,
know there's like
okay,
other views, but that's my
yeah, a lot of people view gender as what an individual identifies as,
yeah.
and it
Gender
sounds
is a
like you're
societal
viewing it as
construct.
perceived.
Jeffrey Phillips just said gender is a societal construct. That's what
Hmm.
I'm saying. Is gender is a societal construct, and if you sum up all of the things that are true about you that are gender relevant, like if we have differences in the way we think about men versus women, and you sum all
Hmm.
those up and put all of the things that are all the facts that are true about me into one of the buckets or the other, it's like whichever bucket is more full is my gender. And maybe it's like
Hmm.
it's a spectrum. It's like I might be more of a of a man than a woman, or I might be close, pretty 50-50, but that's sort of how I think about it.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I don't think I've never heard anybody state it like that, and I think so. Me and you are the only two people that feel this thing,
Yeah, I bet.
because I think most people would just view it like it doesn't matter if, like me, I can have this beard and try to be the most manly man, and say I am a trans woman, and then we just accept that. Not that that's a large case of people, but yeah, gender. Yeah, I kind of view pronouns the same way, where I view pronouns are designed for the talker to describe what they perceive, and that's why I'm kind of like on the fence of. So if I see somebody that looks like Blair White or something, I'd say she did this thing or whatever. It wouldn't matter what you're born as; it's what you perceive. If somebody stole something from a store and I was 10 feet away and I witnessed what I witnessed, when I'm telling the police,
Yeah.
I'm saying, "Oh, this man did this thing. This man was however tall or whatever," and so when I'm saying he ran over here, he ran over here, it's not like that I could be wrong with my perceived
Yeah. Maybe all
gender
you saw was
business.
like the small frame, long hair or something, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and I accept that that they will be used in situations where we're talking about somebody where it's unknown.
mhm.
I'm not a fan of the idea of using the they them thing where it could be known, but somebody's choosing it. And my new thing, this is actually something I've been wanting to talk about to you for a while about, is when I view something like pronouns or any form of talking, I view what matters is moral intent. If somebody doesn't want to use they them, but not because they want to offend and they find it easy or whatever, just because they're not used to it and it just doesn't mean anything to them and they mean no offense whatsoever, I don't see any concern. Where if somebody knows somebody's born male but they're trans and they're just not passing and they want to hurt that person's feelings, there's a problem there. But do you think that it's immoral to not use they them for people that want they them if you have no immoral intent?
Um, yeah, in the same way that like I could do something like that's sort of morally negligent and knowing that there's a high risk of hurting somebody with it, and that's still immoral, I would say, but probably to a lesser
Mm,
degree.
okay.
But like I'm just
Gotcha.
trying to think of
Gotcha.
what that could be. Like
Well, it's
if
something
I just
a
like
lot of religious
I close
people.
my eyes and I start
Mhm.
just like swinging my arms around in
Okay.
like on a busy street or something. It's like I have no intent to harm somebody. So it's like not as bad as going and punching someone directly in the face, but I
Hmm.
realize that I'm putting other people at risk and that like there's a you know what I mean? Like I think the
Yeah.
intent matter like amplifies the moral wrong, but doesn't completely excuse the moral negligence.
Okay. So would you call it immoral or something like it if somebody just said, I don't accept this idea, like I wasn't raised with this they them thing. I'm just like I mean no offense. I can call you by your name. I'm just I don't want to use these added words. Would you call them disrespectful or immoral or something?
Mm, like, well, I don't. It's not a huge deal. Like,
Hmm.
it would be sort of like if I like if I don't know if your wife also had a beard or something, and like
Hmm.
I kept calling her he, and
Hmm.
it's like, come on, man, like I'm not, just stop it, and so I just keep
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
it. Like, yeah, well, I was just raised that people have beards or he's, so I'm just not
yeah,
interested to change. It's like not, I don't know, is it to me? It's like not the hugest deal. Um, but it's, yeah, there's some, like, I don't like it. I would say I wouldn't probably
hmm,
legislate anything on it, but don't think it's a great thing morally if we're just talking
gotcha.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I find I find it to be a very interesting topic. Yeah, yeah, because there's no exact right or wrong there. Because yeah, like if people started calling me she for no reason, it'd be really weird. Um, I would view that their intent is the biggest problem there, but I think there can be issue even if there is no intent.
Well, and
Um,
actually, Jeffrey again brings up another great point, which it depends on how much that person cares about the pronouns. Which
mhm.
you, when you just see someone walking down the street, like you kind of assign them average amount of caring about any one particular thing, right?
Mhm.
So it's like it's probably not a great harm to misgender somebody. Like if somebody calls me a she, it's like, and then they're like, oh, sorry, like I should have called you a he. It's like not even a skin off my nose at all, right? Like it's no
Mhm.
problem. But if that happens to a trans person, that maybe is more psychologically harmful. And so it's like if it happens continually, it's like, would that really bother me? I think I would kind of find it funny. So they're not
Mhm.
really doing anything to me. But if they know that it's hurting somebody's feelings and still continue, I feel like that is worse again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, part of it comes down to the expectation side of it. Like, what if you meet a new friend? You're like, oh, I really like this person. I want to hang out with them all the time. And they say, hey, I have this condition. So everything about me is perfectly normal. The only thing is something in my brain makes it to where when I hang out with people, I need them to wear orange shirts. If you don't wear an orange shirt, like it hurts my feelings. Like, please don't hurt my feelings. Wear an orange shirt every time you come to my house. I feel like there's a difference between offending somebody in a way where they're not asking for a certain thing versus if they have a request,
Hmm.
it seems different. And so the request to like, especially a request that
Can we
counters
make that one
everything.
more grounded in reality? So let's say they're very like they really hate the smell of any sort of cologne or perfume.
I feel like the shirt's more grounded in reality
Oh
to
yeah.
the gender element. If we don't want to go with the they them, then maybe a neo pronoun. I would like doing a ZZer type thing. I would, but we can do cologne. Either way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, cologne doesn't work because
Okay.
it's too grounded in reality.
Okay. But that's sort of my point, is like that it is a reality for them. It's like you might not care about the smell of cologne. Somebody else might care. We can sort of understand and
Hmm.
relate to how somebody might care or might not care. But
Yeah.
so should we not try to do the same thing where it's like it's just like hard to get behind the orange shirt person, whereas it's like it's easier
Yeah.
to relate to the cologne one. That's why I tried to use it.
Well, what if we had never heard of any of this non-binary they them any of that stuff, and then out of nowhere, the first time you've ever heard anything like it, and the only pronouns you've ever heard are he and
Mhm.
she, and then out of nowhere somebody says, "Hey, like when you talk, anytime you would say she her, instead I want you to say zir, and it's
Mhm.
like it's a made up one or whatever." Would that not be even more outrageous in your mind than the orange shirt? Especially if you'd never heard of it before.
But more similar, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Because, yeah, like I don't know what the answer is because whatever becomes the majority should just be whatever it is. If everybody decides like a certain word's definition is going to shift over to something, then it probably should be that because we go with what people use and say. So it will become that. But in the meantime, in the figuring out, because we each get to decide if we want to play a role. It's why words for cool show up for a generation and then disappear. Because we like when I was younger, it was tight and sick, and now it's like lit and fire. And if we want to play a role, we can do it. We can be involved with doing it. But if my kids are all like, "Hey, can you stop saying cool? I want you to say fire," I'll say like, "No, I'm going to say what I want to say. You say what you want to say." And so asking others to say a certain thing, I feel like it only comes into play if it becomes the societally accepted thing.
But you're referring to somebody, so I think there is a slight difference
That's
there.
a fair point.
So it's like
Yeah.
if I change my name and you just refuse to call me by my new name, it's like not the hugest deal in the world. But like, what if that name was linked to like psychological trauma that I experienced in my childhood or something? Where
Yeah. No,
and it's like it really hurts me when people use this old name and I want them to use the new name. It's like, yeah, if you become aware that there is this psychological harm that's being done to me by using the old name, I think that it is morally wrong to call me by that.
Okay. No, and I get that. I think there's definitely something to that. I think part of it would come down to the psychological nature of it, because there's nothing wrong with somebody changing their name, but I view names as kind of what people use for other people. Like I have a friend named Allison, but I call her Allie. But she actually prefers that most people call her Allison. But like it's what I called her the whole time I've known her, so I call her Allie. And then my oldest kid, my wife had 3 kids before I met her, so that my oldest one, her name's Brianna, but my second to youngest one, when he was little, he would call her Brana. He couldn't say Brianna. And so now, with gender stuff or whatever, she's changed her name to a completely different name. But I've called her Brana her whole life, ever since the little one couldn't pronounce Brianna. So I just say Brana, and it's like that's how I address this person. And my daughter, my youngest one, Charlie, we call her Chuck all the time, and sometimes Charles. And it won't matter if she changes her name to Mississippi or just keeps it at Charlie and everybody else calls her Charlie. I feel like my name for her being Chuck, unless it becomes a thing that's psychologically damaging, it's like we can have our individual things that we do as caring people for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, but I think you're right. Like, it shouldn't be like, if some trauma exists separate from myself and my daughter that made my daughter like feel mentally ill when it comes to hearing Chuck, I probably should stop.
Yeah.
But I guess it just depends on the level. If she just like hates some nickname, it'll be like, I don't care. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you this nickname I like.
Or by definition, in your example there, it's like it wasn't that big a deal, and it was kind of turned into a positive, jokey thing. It's like, and it seems like we're sort of on the same page about this issue. It's like, it's better to do something that doesn't psychologically harm somebody if all it is just like adjusting to the new name that they want. And like, should pronouns be any different?
Well, I would call it almost morally a problem from the other perspective. I'd call the person expecting somebody to do it doing the immoral thing.
Whoa. So hold on. So I've got trauma. Let's go back to the name one. So I've got trauma associated with Michael, and I now want to be called Matthew or something because,
Well, that's different. So a name, everybody has a name, and we decide if we want to use names. If I hear a name I can't pronounce, it took me so long to figure out how to pronounce Vivek Ramaswamy. If I hear something, I'll just like say, oh, them or that person or what, until I can get it down or whatever. So a name is just something. We don't have a structure of how we use names in sentences, but we have structures for at what point we'll use she versus her. This isn't she backpack. This is her backpack, and so we have a structure
Michael's
of how
backpack or Matthew's backpack, though.
Well, yeah, I just mean we have a structure of how we use different elements of words. So the idea of telling somebody that you want them to learn new sounds like zir to replace with she, her, and at what point?
Let's jump too far. So just with the name one,
just the name. Okay, with the name one, no, I think it's fine. If I had a friend that changed their name every month, I'd just stop being friends with them.
Okay,
But
I did
correct.
it
If
once because of psychological harm, whatever. Am I
uh
immoral for doing that?
for changing it, no.
Okay, okay. So if why is that different from pronouns?
I think it's the level of expectations of something you're putting on somebody else. So the best way I explain this is
Or
so my
never
daughter
mind the
who
new pronouns. Start with just like this,
huh?
switching them. So I want to be she instead of he.
Oh no, that's fine. I would say
Okay.
that if somebody didn't change anything about themselves, kind of like how you were describing how you view gender, if you just told me now that you're a trans woman and you're she her, but you look exactly how you do, um, I would say I don't know if I would call that immoral, but I'd definitely call it irritating, um, because it would seem like you're not doing it in a genuine way.
Yeah. What if
Um,
I did adjust other things about my appearance?
Oh, then yeah, it'd just be if somebody looks, even if they look
Okay.
like an ugly woman, I want to call them
Okay.
she her.
Okay.
Not that you would look like an ugly woman, you could do it.
So yeah,
Um,
thanks. So the pronouns and the name change and everything isn't a problem as long as it sort of appears genuine. So then, do you agree that there is some like moral responsibility at least to acquiesce to somewhat?
in those cases, I think somewhat, but I do want to point out I'm referring to English speakers.
Yeah, sure.
If somebody came from a different country and they were learning English and they were having a hard time with it and they grew up like in Thailand, there's a gender neutral pronoun that's just used for
Yeah,
everyone. Um,
English.
if, if they like when as they're learning they just think she her is everyone, I would think that it would be immoral
Yeah.
to try to force them. So in the same sense that's a non-English speaker getting them to change how they've viewed words, then taking an English speaker, you have to factor in what they've done their whole lives. So our whole lives, if we've never done they, them, or z, zer, then to
Oh, hold on,
say,
we're not there yet. We're not there
okay,
yet.
okay, okay.
Okay. So for the switching pronouns, so I'm trying to identify as a woman now, and I've switched my pronouns. And you, do you have some sort of like a moral pressure at least to like to not misgender me now that you know that it hurts me if you do, and that my
Yeah.
preferred pronouns are the other way?
I find it slightly, depending on my level of believing it, I'd find it. I might potentially find it slightly irritating. But no, I would say that if somebody seems that they're clearly whether that they're serious about it, and they're not hopping around on stuff,
Yeah.
then yeah, I'd want to do my best and I'd do it, and I think it's probably good to do. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, so Jeffrey, just to be clear in the comments, it's not immoral to accidentally misgender someone. We're talking about to intentionally misgender someone.
Or to request that somebody um, uses language in a way you're not used to.
No.
That's what I'm talking about,
Okay. Yeah, I'm not
and that's
talking
what
about
you're
that.
getting to, right?
I'm eventually going to get there.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
It's not immoral to accidentally misgender somebody. I agree with you. It's like any sort of
Correct.
accident, like, yeah, accidents,
Intention,
I
yeah,
don't think
intention's
can
a big
be
part of it.
immoral unless there's like moral negligence to it. I think that's potentially a thing, but yeah, accidental misgender, agree, not immoral. What we're talking about is like intentional misgendering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've expressed a preference to be called a certain way. I've communicated that there is like psychological harm that's done when not being called that way. Same as like the name change for the psychological trauma thing. It's like, so that same sort of line of thinking applies to gender. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
law. We're not going to make this a legal thing, but it should carry some moral weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you agree. Hopefully
Yep.
Jeffrey agrees also. So now the question is like about the new terms. I'm gonna have to go in a minute here too.
I do too. I had to pee like 30 minutes ago. I think that need went away though. I might have broke something. But
Oh no.
no, I did. No, you're good. Let's finish this up, and then we'll do another talk in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that the new terms thing, like, so it sort of falls into the accidental category if it's hard enough for you, right? It's like for it to be intentionally misgendering someone, you need to consciously decide to like avoid a certain thing or to do a certain thing. It's like if you're not, or it's like it's a reflexive thing to call somebody she instead of they or whatever, or like instead of zir, like it would be it's not like an intentional misgendering.
But I would in this case, I think it would be perfectly fine to intentionally misgender.
Yeah, and I'm saying that like
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't assign moral, like much at least moral weight to that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
in the same way, like yeah, if um
Like
so
an example I'd
I
compare
do
it to.
the Michael
Okay.
to, but instead of changing my name to Matthew, I change my name to like Mischlossenblom. It's like the Michael is the thing that hurts me, and it's like if you're making an attempt, and instead of Mischlossenblom, you just call me Matthew or something. It's as close as I can get. Sorry, I hope that's okay. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
fine. You've made an attempt, like to to reduce the harm by not
Mhm.
calling me Michael anymore.
No,
So
fair point. Yeah, I think you should make the attempt to reduce the harm. I don't think you owe them making an attempt to pronounce something that you can't pronounce.
right,
But yeah, similar to like if I was hanging out with a friend and I told them I was glad about something, and they're like, "When you're with me, can you tell me you're happy about it, not glad?" And I'd be like, "Oh no, like I just don't like the word happy. I like glad." Now, I know it's different when you're referring to someone versus just talking words around someone, but we each use words the way we use them. They mean what they mean, and in some cases we can adjust. But I would say that if somebody were to say, I want you to replace she, her with z, zir, I could say, like, oh, those aren't words I'm used to. I don't want to add that to my vocabulary and get used to it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're going through this. I could say your name and not say she, her, or if you prefer he, him, I could do that. But I don't want to do they, them. I don't want to do zir. I don't want to adjust how I use language. I will just do some things I can do to make you feel better. I will use your first name every time I would use a pronoun,
right.
something like that. If the person said, no, like you're going to make me very sad if you don't use zir, I think that person is doing something on a small scale of immoral to even ask. Um, well, especially to ask a second time. To ask something, I guess it doesn't matter what you ask. Is it immoral to go up to a random stranger and say, "Will you come have sex with me?" I guess there's almost nothing that's immoral to ask initially, but to expect. It's immoral to expect. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
yeah.
Especially
I
especially to
think we
expect a
go deep.
language learning.
Yeah, I think like there's some more nuance that could be explored there, but
Yeah,
I
let's do
think
it.
we're
Different
fairly another time though.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely,
yeah.
definitely. Sorry to keep you so long.
And,
I
no,
meant
no,
to let
no,
you
that's
go
good.
about an hour ago,
I'll
but
respond to just one more thing.
yeah.
This Lewis says, "Why should someone's feelings determine what's moral or not? That's foolish. Anyone at any time can feel offended by anything someone says. Why should their feelings determine morality?" I'll just say like an example. So like let's say I have a super sensitive arm. I like my neurons are just, or it's broken or something. So even just like touching it would just like be excruciatingly painful for me. It's like that's my feelings. It's like I have this super weird condition about me that makes it super painful when you touch my arm. So normally touching somebody's arm isn't a bad thing or whatever, but for me in particular, it has a great amount of harm. So if you accidentally brush by me and touch my arm, that's not immoral. But if you know that this arm is super sensitive and you touch it anyway intentionally, like I would say that's immoral because you knew that it would cause harm. So I would say a very similar thing psychologically with what's happening with what we're talking about. It's like
Yeah.
if you know that there's great psychological harm that can happen by calling somebody the name linked to childhood trauma or misgendering them in a certain way, then it's a similar thing to the extra sensitive arm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one example I would give for it, because I think that a really good counter to what Lewis is saying here is, let's say I was gay and I was with my partner and we were out in public and a priest walked up and was near us. A priest is a bad example. We'll say a preacher, a Christian preacher. Um, and so I know this person might be offended by seeing gay kissing or something. if I kiss my partner there because I'm aware that person's there, but I'm just not letting the outside world affect me, I'm just going to kiss my partner, I don't think that's immoral. But if I only kiss my partner because my intentions were to offend this person, I think those actions are immoral if I'm doing it to offend. And so I think that's kind of the difference here where does that no
More
that
nuance, I think, because like should bigoted preferences be protected the same way that like neutral preferences are
well,
protected?
even not bigoted. So I say goddamn all the time because I'm not religious, but I have my wife's brother is super religious, and he's told me that it offends him when he hears goddamn. If I say this is how I talk, I'm not wanting to offend anybody, I'm just going to say goddamn all the time, I think that's fine. That's my personal choice, and I'm not trying to offend. But if I see a Christian and I try to be as loud as I can, say goddamn so they can hear it and they can feel offended, I would feel like the action of trying to offend, the intention, would make that what I don't think it should be illegal. I don't want any hate speech laws, but I think that can show that I am intentionally harming, even mentally. So, yeah. Oh man, Lewis is getting fighting words at you.
Lewis, in a word, do you agree that intentionally poking somebody's hypersensitive arm is immoral? And do you agree with that? Yes or no?
He's in the group, and we should move that to the group talk on the messenger thing. I got to pee so bad, but it's been great talking to you. And let's not wait too long to do it again.
Okay, sounds good.